This sitting is resumed. Prior to the suspension for lunch, the Honourable Chamber was debating the appropriation bill in Standing Finance Committee. We continue to debate the appropriation bill.
Standing Finance Committee is resumed. Honourable Member for St. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to Senior Minister and to his team. I trust that everyone is well. Senior Minister, my question relates to really about consumers, but the first part is about the Fair Trading Commission. We know that the Fair Trading Commission is to regulate utilities in Barbados and to help ensure in a way that services are delivered fairly and hopefully that prices remain reasonable to Barbadians. And just reading on it, it sounds like the Fair Trading Commission should be seen as a friend to the people. Yet, when you follow the public discourse, one sometimes cannot tell if the public views it as friend or foe. But as I read through the estimates, if you go to 463, subprogram 468, the allocation for the commission this year is $5.6 million. So my question is, and this is really a question that relates to the consumers, how will this allocation strengthen the regulatory oversight of utilities, particularly in relation to electricity, as I have some follow-up questions, and the ongoing energy transition?
Honourable Member, I'm going to allow Mr. Brian Rees, who is CEO of the FTC, to speak to the question. But let me just share with you a little bit that, again, the history helps to give the answer. The Fair Trade Commission, since it had been created, was really supposed to be that intermediary, intermediary force within the Barbados economy that enables us to modernize in a few fundamental ways. One, that you are looking after the protection of consumers, as you indicate. Secondly, that you are regulating in the interest of businesses being fair in the marketplace. So you're avoiding one company having a very dominant position in the market over everybody else. Regulating the way in which mergers and acquisitions take place so that one massive enterprise does not just swallow up everything without reference to the implications it can have for the market. And of course, there is the Office of, what's it called? Consumer Protection? Public Counsel, where the average man in your constituency or mine, who, for example, may go in at a store that I will not name right now, and get or feels that he got unfared in the exercise of purchasing something on a higher purchase basis, or the quality of the fridge that he carry home or the dinette set or whatever is not satisfactory, that he then has some sort of a recourse to a body that will treat to his concern in a very direct and targeted way. So those are some of the things that the Fair Trade Commission should be doing, and that is really what the money budgeted for in the estimates is about. Now, I confess, I have not carefully scrutinized to see the extent to which there's been a variation from before, but and that may be because I've only been doing this now for 3 weeks. But it is a reality that we have to make sure we finance those things. Now, with regard to the energy sector, it is even more important because the energy sector really is that driver of the Barbados economy for the future, at present and for the future. And as we roll out new technologies, there have got to be what we call tariffs in order for investors to get a return on their investment. So that, for example, with regard to solar photovoltaics, when we first recommenced business after COVID, one of the first things that I had to do, and I believe former Minister Sutherland, the Honourable Member for St. George South, would have had to do this just before COVID, was to make sure that we had a tariff that was fit for purpose in the PV sector. And I remember well that we came to Parliament with an accelerated premium for those people who were investing in solar photovoltaics up to a certain level, so as to unlock capital that otherwise would not have been put into the PV sector. And then after that, everybody wanted to get to heaven without dying because they thought they could get money real fast, which is part of the problem that we must now correct today because there's been an over-demand in that sector. But I say all of that simply to say that one of the things that the Fair Trade Commission does is to really set the rates that people will have to pay, and therefore it impacts the returns on the investment of the proposed investor. It is dry, difficult, dull work on the part of the FTC, very, very, very technical, and I guess that is perhaps why people don't really track it, but it is indispensable to the way in which Barbados' economy operates. And as I said, we have Mr. Brian Rees here, who is the CEO, and I feel that he perhaps might be able to share a deeper and better insight than I can.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon to the honourable members. And I thank the Senior Minister for the opportunity he's given to the FTC to share with you, honourable member, through me. Chair, the FTC's budget has been specifically crafted for exactly as the Minister has alluded, to provide not only a connection with our public, but also to be able to meet the demands and the expectations of that public as we develop, not only within the electricity sector, but with all of the sectors that we have a responsibility for. As I'm sure most people are aware within this chamber, and I would wish that we share it with as many persons in Barbados as possible, we cover not only the utility regulation of the sector, but also we cover fair competition, and we also cover, as you alluded to, consumer protection. As far as the budget is concerned, we are specifically, and I'm dealing with the general first, we are specifically looking at greater stakeholder engagement, which includes us getting boots on the ground, engaging with the public, so that we're not seen to be that ivory tower far away where people can't necessarily participate intimately. We want people to know that we are there. The Minister has very eloquently expressed the balance that we have to discharge, which is not only to the consumers, but also to the business sector as well. We need to make sure that there is a ROI, as far as that return on investment. But as far as the consumers are concerned, we have to make sure that we are on the ground, that we are engaging with them, we understand what the issues are, and we're presenting what are credible, useful, and practical solutions to their issues. One such example I would share with you is as far as the telecom sector is concerned. And I know that in the telecom sector, we've had a number of concerns raised about the mobile and broadband services that exist, and whether the service providers' operations are at the standard that one would expect in this age. And we appreciate that there are improvements that must be made. Sadly, we do not have at this present time the regulatory mandate, the statutory mandate to be able to discharge that duty. But nonetheless, in 2023, we actually created a voluntary mobile telecommunications standard for the two operators within our jurisdiction.
Officer, I hate to interrupt you, moving very smoothly, but I do not recall you saying who you are and your position.
My sincerest apologies, Chair. I am Brian Rees. I'm the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the Fair Trading Commission.
Thank you.
My sincerest apologies. As I was saying, Honourable Member, the Telecoms Voluntary Code that was created in 2023, as the name suggests, requires that the service providers first agree to certain standards voluntarily and then comply with those standards over time voluntarily. We've actually seen since 2023 a reduction in the quantum of refunds that we have had to seek for consumers because of the fact that those matters are now handled by that voluntary code. We've actually reduced from 104,000 approximately Barbados dollars, to in the region of around 15,000 Barbados dollars, simply because we've created a standardized approach to the management of the interaction between the consumers and the service providers. But we want to go further, and we're presently engaged with our stakeholders in government who have the responsibility for the amendments that are required to the legislation, to seek to have the legislation adjusted so that we can broaden our mandate, so that we can provide greater opportunity for the establishment of standards to ensure quality. You mentioned specifically the electricity sector, and I purposely waited till last. A lot of what we have put our budget towards is training, ensuring that the FTC staff are able to meet the demands of novel technology, a very dynamic environment, and the move from what was previously a very linear engagement between the public utility and the FTC into what is now a multidimensional approach as far as the independent power producers are concerned. We're going to have a multitude of persons coming onto the grid very shortly, and we need to be able to see them face to face, deliver the services that are expected of us under our statutory mandate, and do that in as timely a manner as possible. And the only way to do that is to build the confidence through the training, through the experience. And the budget is geared towards not only instantaneous training, but developing the FTC as an agency that is at the cutting edge, at the tip of the spear of all matters related to energy. Additionally, we're also looking this year in the financial year 2026-2027 to have an organizational review done. One was started, I believe maybe a year or two ago, and it was not completed because of some extraneous matters. But we do see the need to complete the organizational review to be able to say that we not only have, but have a plan for developing the manpower for the FTC. We need to be able to assess what are the manpower hours, the approximate hours that are required to complete tasks, to ensure that we have sufficient and properly trained manpower to deliver those services that we see necessary. I could go on if you wish me to, but if I have answered your question, I remain here to any further questions.
No need to go on. You were extremely thorough, and I appreciate the response. It's very informative. My second question, I guess it's tied to the first, and my follow-up question really is emerged from your conversation, Minister, on the Office of Public Counsel. In the estimates, they have 1.2 million, and similar to the FTC, I think the words that Mr. Reese used was seen as ivory towers. When I know that their primary purpose, my mind always goes to what's in the deal for people? How does this help people? And so for me, how do we, or what is the role, I should say, of the Office of Public Counsel? I know I've seen in terms of mediation, regulatory proceedings, and so on and so forth, but with a little bit more specificity for the public, so that these things do not seem to be things outside the reach of the ordinary citizen. What is the role and what is the $1.2 million allocated in these year's estimates for, similar to what FTC has been able to explain? My view also is that a lot of what you said should be known to the public. I just think we are not doing enough public engagement. And we are allowing the very good work of a lot of these organizations to be lost in untamed social media conversations. And so I would like to hear through you, Minister, about the Office of Public Counsel and to what extent that agency has really been able to help ordinary people.
Honorable member, you know that that is a new question. Say that again.
My question, Chair, was in relation to regulatory agencies and the impact they're having on consumers. And that the minister, in his response, referred to the Office of Public Counsel as part of that programming. It is very much a follow-up question, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Senior Minister. And I can only tell you that I share your view. And having come back to the ministry, I feel a certain sense of purpose to rededicate myself on this issue. And for me, it is an unfinished part of the original business when I had first an opportunity. And I will tell you, there are a few departments of this ministry, one which is no longer with us, but I have signaled already, and I will signal again, that I feel strongly it perhaps needs to be with us, and that is the BNSI. There are certain indispensable parts of the apparatus of this ministry, which I think the public needs to be conversant about. The public needs to be as aware of as they are aware of anything else that happens in Barbados, because they really represent tangible mechanisms which the average Barbadian can use in order to make the quality of life better financially in this country. So that the BNSI, which is the National Standards Institute, for example, should be part of the discussion of any business person in Barbados, because of the fact that its business really is about helping people to do what they do to the highest possible standard. Believe you me, in 2022, when I became the minister, or was it 2021, there were 9,000 identified businesses under this sector in Barbados, and 43 had a relationship with the BNSI. And that alarmed me. On Sunday, I'm going to invite Sandra Rollins, who is public counsel, to share her thoughts on this with you. But on Sunday, as I talked to some of the officers from the public counsel's office, I said the same thing, that the work that they're doing is indispensable, but we hide in the light under the bushel. And unless people know, then, and perhaps it is that they know but have forgotten and it has not been constantly re-emphasized. I remember when the Fair Trade Commission was first created, the idea of an Office of Public Counsel and what it could do to help people who want to fight up with whatever private sector entity it is, especially the ones that were at that time doing a lot of hire purchase type business. That was something that I think gained good common currency in Barbados. Many years after, I don't sense that anybody talks about it. But we have to find a way to keep it top of mind, and I think this is one of the challenges that PS, myself, and my deputy are going to have to work through, because it may be that we need to use GIS better. There may be many ways in which we approach this, but the fact of the matter is that you're 100% right. I cannot disagree with you in any way. These are institutions that are critical. They empower the Barbadian consumer, they empower the Barbadian business, and ensure fairness in the marketplace, and those are the things that we have to help to deliver. If Ms. Rollins is in a position now to be able to speak, I would yield the floor to her.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Sandra Rollins. I am the public counsel in the Office of Public Counsel. The role of the Office of Public Counsel, it is multifaceted. Mainly it is to educate the consumers of Barbados about their rights and also form of redress under the Consumer Guarantees Act, Cap 326E of the laws of Barbados. We are also there to guide suppliers of both goods and services. The whole idea is that we want consumers to be confident in the marketplace, that when they purchase goods, be it a washing machine, a cell phone, that they can feel comfortable that they are getting a product of acceptable quality, fit for purpose, and that if they are getting any service done, be it getting a house painted, house renovated, that the supplier of the services would provide the service of good standard. Now, it is true that many persons know of the FTC more than they know of the Office of the Public Counsel. And during I have been there from April last year to now, and we have been doing a series of outreach programs. We took part in two or three of the regathering exercises, two actually. One in St. John and the other three. One in St. John, one in St. George, and the other that was by the Central Bank. We also do outreach with the Registrar of Cooperatives. In those situations, we are meeting both consumers and we are also meeting suppliers. It is important that we engage both of them. This year, we have an essay competition and a poster competition running in the secondary schools. And shortly during this month, we will have a suppliers forum. So we recognize that the Office of Public Counsel has to get out there and let people, both the consumers and the suppliers, know that we are there for them. What we have found recently, as I was mentioning to someone, that we are getting an increasing number, though small, an increasing number of suppliers calling the Office of Public Counsel to get guidance on how they should treat to a complaint from a consumer.
My final follow-up and
Before you go there, if I could just make an interjection, Mr. Chairman, because I think that there's a policy issue that is very important here. Senior Minister, I feel that in your sector, well, a service that is done or provided has to be provided in a timely manner. And you will find as you go through the infrastructure experience that there are many contractors who are accused of not performing in a timely manner. That is one of the concerns really that the Consumers Guarantee Act speaks to. I recall well that issues of prior use of a product, that people buy something anticipating that it is brand new or a certain type of condition, and then lo and behold, that is not the case. The question of repairs and availability of spare parts, that is a burning issue in Barbados. And it is, to my way of thinking, highly unfortunate, first of all, that these things continue to happen all through the years without the appropriate intervention and satisfactory resolution. But it happens because our people may not be as aware as perhaps we think they are or as they should be. And we got to help them be aware. So I own it as minister that this is one of the challenges that we're going to have to do. We're going to have, as Pierre said, to do the public relations. It may mean one day that we have to hire public relations people. We hate to think it has to come to that. But it really does mean that we have to have an educational program, because as I just said these things, I could see the nod in your head as you recognize that these are matters that you yourself will collide with, your constituents can collide with, the whole of Barbados collides with, but we have not necessarily used the existing institution appropriately. So it isn't that it isn't there. The Office of Public Counsel is there, and it is staffed, and it is supposed to be doing this work, but it can't do that which is not brought to its attention, and we have to help it, therefore, do that.
My final follow-up, Chair, and again, so that you don't scold me unnecessarily, I will try to make the association obvious. But it is in relation to the points that were raised, I think, both by Senior Minister and Mr. Rees, in relation to this energy transition, and I think what we ought to see coming. Now, when I perused your estimates, Senior Minister, I saw explanatory notes referring to work with electric buses, vehicle-to-grid systems, different things. And so it tells me that there's going to be a conversation around the capacity at some point of the grid. And perhaps, as you mentioned, you hinted, the inevitable disappointment of Barbadians if they're not able to get what they think this great future promises. And so I want to know to what extent are these agencies, whether it is the FTC, whether it is the Office of Public Counsel, or whatever agency, is currently monitoring that transition to the extent that when Barbadians find themselves where perhaps the grid infrastructure is unable to grant them what they think they should get, or when if there are too many buses or too many electric vehicles, who's monitoring this? Because at some point, I suspect these are going to be the realities faced by the Fair Trading Commission. And I heard Mr. Rees speak of training, so I imagine that he's preparing his staff for some of these conversations. But I suspect the direction that the country is going to have to filter down to these agencies so that when these things come, inevitably as they will, the ministry is better able to respond. So I just want to know to what extent are we monitoring and what planning mechanisms are currently in place to be able to help address what I think is an inevitable reality, one way or the other.
And thank you for the question, Senior Minister. When I asked Delano Canterbury, who I believe is project director with renewables, to prepare himself to answer. But let me say to you that, again, this is where I think a certain element of perhaps reset, but definitely dialogue has to take place. I don't want to just use the word reset because I am not entirely sure the extent to which some of these things have been happening during under the last minister who was doing a number of different things in this sector. But I do believe that, for example, just to use your example, answering you directly, the FTC has a role to play, but it is by no stretch of the imagination the be-all and end-all of this question of how we monitor what the market is going to be able to bear and how much renewable energy can come on. That is really going to have to be done by the ministry itself as market monitor. And there is a specifically defined role for the Ministry of Energy as market monitor. Again, when I was minister previously, I had been engaging with the automotive sector in Barbados. And I was doing so, and you may recall, I had brought a couple of papers to Cabinet where we were updating colleagues on the fact that we obviously have a given amount of vehicles on the ground in Barbados. And as we think about how we roll out the new look of vehicle, which is hybrid, electric, etc., we have to make provision for the fact that there are going to be some, as recently as this morning, I have no doubt, people would have gone to buy a brand new car, and that brand new car is operating off of diesel or gas. But we will come to a point in time, in the not too distant future, when there will be no more diesel or gasoline vehicles being brought into Barbados. And therefore, we have then to think in terms not of a phase out, because that point of time, I don't want to be quoted as given any finite period, but it can't be that far away. So therefore, we know this because we have a commitment to be entirely fossil fuel free by 2035. We're in 2026 now. So let us assume that happened in 2034, that we said that. That vehicle is still a relatively young vehicle. So we have to be looking at these things and then thinking in terms of how we fuel that vehicle, because there ain't gonna be no more diesel. So the biofuel discussion has to take place. And those are some of the conversations that we have started to have. And I think I'm going to be bringing a redoubling of the energy, no pun intended, to those conversations, because I want to know that all importers of vehicle in Barbados, large or small, must be on board with what it is that we're trying to do, because I do not want to hear that at the last minute people are crying out saying, oh gosh, this is an interruption to my business, I was projecting whatever, and the government come and say something different. We need to be able to be all on the same page on this. So again, I take your point, Minister. There are many moving parts in this conversation, but it is a journey of national transformation, and it is going to require a lot of discussion and forbearance on both sides, because government has not always gotten it right and will not always get it right. But equally, we have to be given the private sector an opportunity to plan ahead and make the necessary adjustments. And have a proper window to do that. Delano Scantlebury, as I said, would probably be able to speak fairly extensively on this matter as well.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senior Minister. Honorable members, my name is Delano Scantlebury, and I'm the Project Director in the Project Monitoring and Coordination Team in the Ministry of Energy, Business Development, and Consumer Affairs. In relation to monitoring and in terms of the policies of government, the Project Monitoring and Coordination Team is made up of two persons, myself and a senior technical officer. And we have been challenged. However, we have resources in this budget that would see us bring on two technical officers and some other persons to assist us in regard to the whole monitoring and coordinating of the Barbados National Energy Policy. But additionally, we have been working on the battery energy storage system as well as the Lambert's Wind project. And those have taken over the majority of the resource that we have. But to say now that we have about 16%, I would say, execution in regard to the goal of the Barbados National Energy Policy at this point in time. And we are making serious inroads, and we would expect that with the battery energy storage system, which will be looking at 60 megawatts, along with the energy storage tariff, which covers 50 megawatts, and the Lambert's Wind project, which should be around between 30 and 50, that we would be moving in the right direction in regard to fulfilling on that mandate. I think I'll stop at that point.
And only to say before you go further, Senior Minister, that again, you would have heard, it is fairly self-evident. We are undertaking a mammoth task of transformation, but the bodies, the human capital has also to be there. But that is not a situation peculiar only to this ministry. We are all doing more with less, and that is the challenge.
Thanks, Chair. Senior Minister, I wish you all the best. I suspect that after this conversation, you'll be in a better position to argue for some support for Mr. Delano to be able to deliver on this most important mandate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As they say, patience is a virtue. Minister, I want to thank you for what you've done so far. And what I'm going to raise with you is something that people have raised with me, and people have asked me questions, and then in trying to answer those questions, I realize where the issue really lies. If you were to go to Google, and this is the last resort, it disappeared, concessional or grant funding for development in Barbados. I was just Googling widely. It lists a number of things: enterprise growth fund, the trust funds, student revolving loan fund, a set of things. But most people in Barbados have no idea of what applies to who and how to access it. So everybody now knows about the trust funds, because I think perhaps the biggest assistance program we've ever articulated or pushed has probably been the trust funds. So most Bajans know that the trust funds exist. Somebody raised earlier that they may not know exactly how to access it, but most people know it exists and they know the reason for it. But for the person who does not need $10,000 or $15,000, but for the person who is looking for $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, and they have a plan, then they don't know where to go. Now, a lot of the grants that we have and the facilities we have contemplate them being used by somebody. So it's not that we have them and we hope people don't find them and nobody don't come and ask for them and then we try ways to disqualify them. It should be the other way. We should publicize them as much as possible, so as many people as possible know about the facilities, make the criteria and their application very, very clear that everybody knows this, you can go and pick the fund that best serves what it is that you're trying to do and know what you have to bring in order to get a successful application. So there should be somewhere where all of this is in one place. Funding by government, and it lists it down and it has the branches and you can follow it through and whatnot. So I'm just wondering if there is any plan to do anything like that. And then the flip side as well is not just a plan to do it, but to publicize it so everybody can actually know.
And the answer to both questions is yes. I think that that is also one of the areas where, as I said before, we are hiding the light under the bushel. It is not only my ministry, but with great respect, it is also the Ministry of Finance. And I was looking to see whether my colleague, Minister Strong, our colleague, was in the room. The fact of the matter is that there are many windows. In fact, there is a wide and exhaustive menu of options available to business people in Barbados, irrespective of the sector that they are in. And we are talking about small business, micro business, medium-sized business in Barbados. There are equally a whole raft of options available to those businesses which are specifically located in the tourism sector, even though there are also small, micro, and medium businesses. So you can literally pick the fruit that you wish to eat from an orchard. Similarly, if you go into the agricultural sector, there is funding there as well. So that, the Agricultural Development Fund. What we do not lack for is a menu of funding opportunities. I think you're 100% right. What is necessary is for some of this to be rationalized, and ideally in a digital world.
The actual menu.
Yeah, ideally in a digital world, we should be able to place these potential services in one place so that you can go and see and understand how you navigate, where you go to get what you want. And quite frankly, it might be helpful to do that so as to avoid duplication as well. And that is another thing that perhaps needs to be carefully thought through. But I do agree with you that this is an area that does require some attention in the interest of making life easier for people who are seeking out what is available.
So in pursuit of that, the other issue that persons face is nobody's lending you money unless you're showing some commitment through either an incorporated company or some registered business or something. And I want to commend, I was about to say Kaipo, I want to commend the corporate registry for the work it has done recently. But I still do believe that the incorporation of businesses and forming businesses in Barbados takes too long. There's no, sometimes when you go trying to incorporate a business, if your name is kind of close to an existing name, so let's say Double R's DJing services, but I want our R's car rentals, where one has absolutely nothing to do with the next one, right? We keep getting stopped for what I call, or we add complications where I think we need to look and see exactly what is, why the rules exist, so what the rules governing passing off, and those sort of things that make the application, the rules make sense. So I want to know what is being done to streamline the processes for registering businesses and companies and making them a lot more user-friendly and a lot faster. Sometimes the opportunity is lost because you can't get that company incorporated today or tomorrow.
Minister, AG, much like you, I understand it from the side of the practitioner of law who has to try to get something done for a client very quickly. Ms. Tamisha Rochester is the officer in charge of Business Barbados right now, and was before that, as you know, Registrar of Corporate Affairs, so I'm going to allow her to field your question. But I do think it is a reality that we have to be mindful of. I myself, as I said, have experienced it. And frankly speaking, I know that a lot of work had been done in terms of trying to improve the state of affairs. I would be interested myself in hearing from not only from the from the officer in charge, but equally from the sector as to the extent to which they identify significant improvement now as opposed to what it used to be. But you and I both know that significant effort has been put into this. But I will yield the floor to Ms. Rochester so that she can share her thoughts.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, honorable members. My name is Tamisha Rochester. I am the Registrar and Officer in charge of Business Barbados. Sorry. Yeah, so to answer your question, Business Barbados is in the process of transforming the way we have done business and have done business for decades, and to move away from a system that was not built for business in the 21st century. So last year we indicated that a new system was coming. And not only is a new system coming, but what we've done over the past year has been to lay the groundwork digitally for the improvements that are to come, but also to review all of the processes, the workflows, the process engineering. And we have a legislative blueprint and a legislative drafter on board who is reviewing the legislation. So it is all of these things combined together that need to work together to be able to allow us to improve the system. So as we know, digital transformation is complex, and we are still working with a system, a legacy system on legacy data that involves multiple integrations, while also as we are transforming, making sure that we are up and running to transform with that legacy system. So a lot of the work that we have done over the past year has not been visible to the public, and understandably so. We have been building the backbone, building the foundation, getting the new improvements, the systems, changing the workflows, et cetera, for precisely the point that you made. The end result, faster incorporations, stronger systems, more secure systems, and the ability for business persons to be able to move quickly without impediment. So as I said, it's not just a siloed approach we're taking. We're looking at all of the different factors that lead to timelines. And importantly, I should mention as well, we're using the data to guide us. Before we were in a situation where we were basically operating on anecdotal information. We are actually capturing data, so we're capturing the transaction times, the number of transactions, the number of steps in transactions, feedback from the customers where pain points still exist, and we're using this data to drive the transformation that we've already started and we're continuing to do.
Before you go further, AG, let me just amplify that a little bit, because what Ms. Rochester is referring to is a dashboard against which we index and track the satisfaction. PS Hunt, I think, might be able to lend us some further assistance with regard to the functioning of, what is it, the portal that is there now?
Thank you, Chair. As Senior Minister, in relation to your first question, Attorney General, in terms of having one place to capture the information, we are actually working on an overall portal. Earlier, I spoke to the Barbados, the Business Enterprise Exchange, sorry, but we're also working on one portal where persons can log on and see everything business related. So you can find information on fund access, information on trust loans, information on Business Barbados, access to Business Barbados, so that persons can have a one-stop shop and be aware of what is available to help them in their business needs.
So thank you for that. And just for the record, Ms. Rochester, although that question fell to you, I feel it incumbent upon me to say that my dealings with you over the last, since you've been in the position, have been nothing short of fruitful, helpful, and efficient. But I feel that you're, in a sense, constrained by a system that you fell into, as opposed to one that you built around yourself. So just, P.S., I appreciate what you're saying, and just to further develop that as to why it is critical, we think in terms of businesses. For example, you think about business, you think about building, right? But the businesses, a lot of these small businesses in Barbados don't have a building. So we need to start thinking of the small man and not just putting him in a category of small business, right? But he might be small now with the potential to expand if he's facilitated properly. So we need to make our facilities and our systems entirely user-friendly so as not to discourage persons at the very first hurdle of registering the actual business, because a lot of people get turned off at that spot. And invariably, as we do business with government, everything that government is asking you to do now, they want you to have the TAMIS number or to give a business name or whatnot. So we are requiring it of the people, but yet we're making it difficult, or we have not made it easy for them to put themselves in a position where they're compliant to receive even small business from government. The last thing, and that was the intro to this point, you raised the point of fund access. I'm noticing that there's nothing in the estimates for this year. I'm looking at page 229 of the estimates. There's nothing in the estimates this year for fund access. And as fund access is one of the ones that people will know. They know trust loans and know fund access. They might not know the rest. When you look and you see there's nothing there, it tends to give you pause. So is there an explanation for that? And yeah, I'll cut off at that point. Is there an explanation for that?
Well, PS pulls up what he has to pull up. Let me just say to you that there will be a move-in of $5 million for fund access. And I think that the documentation that PS wants to refer to is you found it?
Well, you're definitely on top of your ministry, Minister. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Chair, thank you.
Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you, Chair. My questions will actually follow some of the comments already made by the AG. Critical to our plan as a government is economic enfranchisement and inclusivity. To be able to create a Barbados in which every person who wishes to succeed and be a part of the economic gains and prosperity has the support and a way in which to engage that platform. We know that for many, many years, that platform would be dysfunctional, dominated by a handful, and systems set up that don't properly support leveling it out and removing the obstacles. And I appreciated hearing some of what you were sharing already, the steps that you're taking to give better support to entrepreneurs, etc. One of the areas, if we're going to do that, there are a number of things that, in my mind, need to be done to complete the ecosystem in a way that it is truly helpful and liberating to all Barbadians. And the issue of the opportunities in the economy would be critical. We are doing estimates, we are doing a budget, and in there will be chock full of opportunities for people to engage the economic space. But many people may not be able to spot the opportunity in something that we share. And we have not, as far as I am aware, looked at taking the time to pull out in each budget the things that are there and to have a methodology for spreading it. So what I want to know is if in the forward plans for the ministry, if this type of work can be done, and how do you, if you do have a plan, how do you propose to make this happen? Because without that knowledge, people cannot engage the space. And then people then cluster in the same areas and create saturation in the areas that they know, whereas if they had better knowledge, they could spread and be engaged in niches that really have some opportunity. So I just want to know if there are plans to be able to do that and how you think you would like to approach it.
Minister, I want to begin by saying that I share your view on a liberating ecosystem which will facilitate meaningful engagement. But I am not sure I understand the thrust of the question. So if you wouldn't mind, just to rephrase the question a little bit, because as I consulted both PS and DPS, and we cannot agree on a common understanding of your question. So if you rephrase it, it may help us a little bit.
If there are plans to take the budget, the spending that will be taking place there, and identifying the business opportunities that more people can engage. A lot of people have difficulty in deciphering.
Oh, you mean to publicly identify the business opportunities?
Yes, so that people can see where they could enter.
I'm with you, okay. And yes, the answer to that would be yes. I do not know that it would be effective if we just tried to pull them all out as one bundle and throw it out into the atmosphere. But certainly there are a number, as you know, there are a number of departments within this ministry. And so, for example, just to randomly go through one or two, I think it would be correct to say that there's $6 million in the vote for the National Financial Literacy Platform program. And we have already had discussion as to how we will have targeted interventions in expanding the National Financial Literacy effort. I had indicated earlier that in part thanks to you, and to others who have been in the Ministry of Education, we now have all of the public primary and public secondary schools on board, and they would have, within the last month, been at least 3,000 sessions that had been done, or over 3,000 sessions that had been done with children on financial literacy in our schools during the course of the last 6 months, We must move that program now and use that $6 million to get us into communities. And you understand the importance of that. When you were in the ministry, this was one of the things that you would have been urging upon us. And the fact of the matter is that it is not just schools, and the communities, it is equally in the businesses. And so therefore, I can say to you that already we have a number of business places where we are doing the National Financial Literacy training. That, of course, enables the average employee to be able, while at work or in the context of the working space, to be doing something which is personally developmental and economically helpful to themselves. So we're, again, meeting people where they are. There are several departments where the rollout will be done in a similar vein. And so therefore, the answer to your question again is yes. From department to department, we would be using that amplified vote, and there are many areas where now in this $8 million we are having more to spend than we ever did before, and we are planning to deliver in a very direct way to the sector that the department has control over.
I'm glad to hear the response, Senior Minister, because I believe collaboration between units and between ministries is going to be critical going forward. In the Ministry of Training and Tertiary Education, we would be incorporating entrepreneurship and financial literacy training within the programs which we will offer going forward. And what we want to do is to be able to give people the option of acquiring skills that they can either use in entrepreneurship or use to be able to get a job. One of the challenges, however, that small businesses experience in trying to get work, whether it is from government or from in the private sector, is that sometimes they may not have the expertise, sometimes they may not have the insurance to cover if they make an error. I'll never forget one entrepreneur saying to me, it is not that the quality of bigger companies is necessarily better, it is that if they make a mistake, they have the money to deal with it, whereas the small business person may have to run and hide. So that's why I appreciated what you said about standards and being able to support and help people to meet them. So my question is, in order for people to be able to take advantage of business opportunities, there may be the need to work in cooperatives to do it. And I know that a question came about cooperatives already, but I want to know if the cooperatives department is working towards looking at helping them to source opportunities and to work in groups to get it. And if we can consider putting project managers. A case in point is like when you have construction, for example, because sometimes when there are mistakes in construction, it is a headache, not only for the homeowner, but whoever has done the project and so on, and the whole thing comes into disrepute. So people try to avoid small persons doing certain things. So my question is, can we look at having project managers that would supervise, say, a small group of people who have a contract to help them work through it until they build sufficient experience? Otherwise, they'll never be able to break into the opportunities that become available in the economy. Because right now, the economy is growing, and if it is growing, there are opportunities, and we need these supports to help them to be able to get in and be a part of it without creating unnecessary damage to their reputation or to the client that they're serving or for the person that they are doing the project on behalf of.
Thank you, Minister. And Minister, may I say to you, I'm going to invite two people to speak to this. The CEO of the Trust Fund Limited, Mr. Jerry Amos, would have, I am sure, been trying to signal to me when I was addressing the issue of your previous question. But equally, Mr. Brent Gittins, who is Registrar of the Cooperatives, should also be given the opportunity to speak to the latter. I just want to say briefly that I agree with you. I think maybe you have actually understated a chronic case of a problem in Barbados. The word stigma is the ideal word to use in my judgment. And we stigmatize small and micro businesses due to, on the basis of operational issues, due to inherent prejudices in this society. For example, in addition to the very clear and cogent point you make, you can add the stigma, which is an ongoing stigma in the construction sector, where we say that small business people should self-mobilize, because self-mobilization is a tool that is used by the larger entities in construction to convince clients, including the government of Barbados, that, look, you don't have to put yourself out to find resources to start a project. We can self-mobilize and get it up and off the ground faster. And so therefore, it gives you longer lead time to do your budgeting and be ready to start to pay. Fact of the matter is, however, that if you approach it that way, you stigmatize the small business person who does not have the capacity to self-mobilize because he has been functioning on very slender profit margins. He has no financial buffer to fall back on and to protect himself financially, far less to take out his own money in order to go or to mobilize resources against his limited assets in order to start a project without being funded to mobilize. And so therefore, the small business person is excluded from the opportunity. And that is an inherent prejudice that does not work in the interest of business development across the board in Barbados. So I want to be very candid. My view is that those are some of the things that these are ills that we have to confront, face on, and find a way to overcome. I will yield the floor, first of all, to Mr. Jerry Amos on the previous question, and then to Mr. Brent Gittins on Registrar of Co-ops.
Thank you, Senior Minister, and thank you for your question, Member for St. James South. I believe many ministers spoke. We were speaking about opportunities. So earlier I spoke about the second pillar in our 7-point plan. So I want to speak on the first pillar. Is a program we are introducing called TOP, Targeted Opportunities Pipeline. So when I heard you spoke about opportunities, I thought that this was the ideal time to speak on this. Now, the predecessor to this program were two, our MyFest program and our StayFest program. What our MyFest program did was we actually help entrepreneurs to build their products up to standards. And I'm glad the minister spoke about BNSA because they played a crucial role in actually ensuring that the standards were met by these entrepreneurs, not only locally, because they sit on the shelf locally, but also regionally and extra-regionally. So to speak on our MyFest program, I want to first say that, I spoke to the minister earlier on this, that I was so proud this week when a store owner in Bridgetown said that she's not taking any products for anyone unless to go through the Barbados Trust Fund Limited MyFest program because of the standards that they come out to the program with. So let me speak about TOP. BTFL will expand the Targeted Opportunity Pipeline, a training and developmental program focused on governance, financial discipline, and around business management. Entrepreneurs will receive core training in export readiness, investment readiness, franchising, co-packaging opportunity, and market identification. Following this foundation, entrepreneurs may move into specialized programs such as MyFest for manufacturers and StayFest for service-based entrepreneurs, creating clear pathways from ideas to scalable businesses. I want to go and speak of another pillar. Investing in the next generation. BTFL will encourage early-stage entrepreneurs among young Barbadians by supporting families who wish to assist their children in launching businesses. Parents may partner with the institution to underwrite or guarantee small starter loans that allow young entrepreneurs to test viable business ideas. And let me explain that a bit. We're here to speak about the fact that there are richer persons in the island than others. So when I don't want to say the word, but when a more fortunate family has a child that wants to go into a business, the parent might say, here for this little $10,000, you can start your business. We have persons in the community that are not able to do that. So we're saying to parents, come with your child, they have a good idea in school already. We will allow you to underwrite the loan for that child, and we will actually give the loan so the child can actually live the dreams. We see this all the time in other sports, where young people are good at cricket at a certain age, they don't have the exposure, and when they reach 21, they can't make the West Indies team. We want to get these young people very early, bring them into business, and then we train them right up the line so that they become successful in what they want to do. So we want the parents to come forward with the children, and we're going to allow them to underwrite the loan for the kids. So all the opportunities you're talking about, we're trying to capture. We even want to go into the prison because we've seen over the last couple of years how we had persons that were incarcerated. They came out and they're doing wonderful things. So we even want to go into the prisons as well to carry this training to the prisons. So we are looking for opportunities, member. We are looking for opportunities for entrepreneurs, and trust me, we are going to achieve our goals.
And Registrar of Cooperatives, Mr. Gittins.
Good afternoon, everyone. Brent Gittins, Registrar of Cooperatives. Through you, Chair, I will seek to answer the question from the Honourable Minister. So I would say that the process of having project managers working with cooperatives has already started. We would have recently formed a cooperative in construction. And that cooperative has a project management team that will seek to oversee the viability of projects that the cooperative takes on. The team also will include a quantity surveyor. So the whole notion of project managers working with cooperatives, I would say, is already in motion. Our department as well is quite willing to put groups of people in contact with project managers that we would have, that we can source. So I would say that we try to ensure that cooperatives that are involved in certain projects would not go into these projects blindly, that they seek to have a project management team either within the cooperative or they can have them as consultants to ensure that the projects that they're entering into are viable and worth the risk of taking on. So I hope that answers your question.
It certainly does, and I'm very, you wanted to?
No, I was only going to say, Honourable Member, that is standard now across the ministry. And so, for example, in the vending zones, there will be project managers who will be guiding that process.
Excellent, and let me thank you very, very much for that, because that is going to make a great deal of difference to people being able to participate in the opportunities in the economy. The only thing you need now is to make sure that government pays early and on time so that we don't kill the cash flow of small entrepreneurs.
We're going to speak to that too, Honourable Member, by virtue of a program called Factoring. And if you have another question or you want to come back, I will elaborate on factoring. I don't want to incur the chairman's wrath. But I think that we need to accept that it is a reality that many of our small businesses struggle. And frankly speaking, not because only government pays late, but it is a lived reality that large private companies that get contracts subcontract to small players and pay them late too. In my professional capacity, I've had to carry some to court when 6 months pass and they didn't get paid yet. And so therefore I know of what I speak. And the issue of factoring is a policy intervention that will allow for an entity that might otherwise have to live off of an overdraft facility at 10 or 12% every month to be able to get the invoice paid off, but only pay 2%. There were those who needed financial literacy training in the last election that spoke against it, but I know that it is something that will change the course of life in Barbados. No, I didn't know. I meant people that are found in a certain street in St. Michael.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, and kudos for putting these things in place for the small business sector.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. John.
Thank you, Chair. Senior Minister, I have one question. I have several, well, over 100 buildings across the island, community centers and pavilions. I'm just asking, what is the possibility to initiate a project between my ministry and yours that will allow some of the small facilities to have lights as a result of the PV systems on the top of these buildings?
I think that the possibility would be great, and I would warmly welcome a discussion on it with you and your senior team. Off the top of my head, I will invite the Deputy Permanent Secretary, who very, very competent on these issues of projects to tell me whether there's a foreseeable challenge. Obviously, you're not putting it to me, we haven't drilled down. But it makes good sense to me because just like the vending zones, I do feel that if we can have lights that are available at less cost, then it facilitates the activity into the evening. And in your case, sir, it enables us to have sporting and community development, which is what the country needs, an outlet, especially for our young people, our young males, to compete fiercely and competitively on the field of play and away from the firearms. And in my own judgment, in terms of business, it does allow for the more activities of that nature we can have in a community, the more the serious entrepreneurs will be found. The people who, as soon as there is a large grouping coming together for whatever event it might be or training, they also find an opportunity to sell some natural juices. They also find an opportunity to be involved commercially in some way. And I think that, therefore, there can be a happy marriage of the two endeavors. DPS, you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Senior Minister. Good afternoon, Chair and colleagues and members of Parliament. My name is Keisha Reed. I'm the Deputy Permanent Secretary Projects in the Ministry of Energy, Business Development and Consumer Affairs. Thanks for the question, Member of Parliament. We do have a number of projects within the ministry, and I'll speak to one particular project where I think we can have synergies, which is the Sustainable Energy Investment Program, where under that project, we have resources to do solar PV as well as energy efficiency across government buildings. We would have done a number of energy assessments on a number of buildings. I will have to liaise with the team to see if any of your buildings were part of that list. But I think it is a great initiative. Barring the challenges with the capacity to the grid, we can have discussions with our ministry, my ministry and yours, in terms of how we can scope out a project that we could execute over the next few years. We have 3 more years for the Sustainable Energy Program, and that is funded by the IDB and the EU, and I can have discussions with the project manager who is here and her team with respect to how we can do that. If we don't have scope to be able to execute it under that project, we can also scope out and plan a new project, if so be it, to facilitate this. But I think it is very important. I myself sometimes on afternoons utilize some of the facilities for my afternoon walks, and we have to make sure we finish our exercise before the sun goes down. So it brings great opportunity for not just the persons in the community playing sports, but for the average persons who want to exercise, especially when we get to a certain age, to be able to use the facilities for longer periods.
And just for your benefit, Honourable Member, Minister, that reference to 3 years doesn't mean we will wait 3 years for the project to start.
No.
It means that we have 3 years left in that fund. Yeah, okay. So for you and I, we're talking 3 weeks, 3 months.
Who do I send correspondence to? I will have my PS expedite the process next week. Who do I send?
Go to DPS Reed, who's sitting to my right, and as you and I share common interests in your constituency, sir, you can just lift the receiver and speak with me.
Are you?
Honourable Member for St. Philip South.
Thank you, Chair. I do have, Senior Minister, congratulations to you and your team for an excellent job done so far. I've been following the presentations, and I'm indeed pleased to note the responses. However, I do have a burning issue as it relates to telecommunication cables that have become a source of growing national concern for Barbadians. The untidy proliferation of overhead wires across many communities has created an unsightly landscape that distracts from the natural beauty of our country. In addition to the aesthetic impact, these cables pose potential safety hazards where they hang low across roadways and pedestrian ways, creating risks for both vehicular and on-foot traffic. In a country that prides itself on order, infrastructure, resilience, and a high standard of public spaces, this situation has increasingly become a vexing issue that warrants urgent attention. Therefore, I will be happy to know what measures are currently being proposed or implemented to regulate the installation, management, and maintenance of telecommunication cables across Barbados, and whether your ministry intends to establish and enforce a comprehensive regulatory framework to address this matter.
I want to thank you for that question, to which I will refer the FTC CEO, Fair Trade Commission CEO, Mr. Rees, and give him the opportunity to speak, because really and truly, the FTC, as I indicated, falls within the ministry, but we are not, the ministry itself cannot do that which you asked about, which is to say, to make that type of intervention. I, however, as minister, can say to you that I agree with you 100%. It is an eyesore. I congratulate you on your diplomacy. Having just left that particular field of endeavor, I can tell you that you commend yourself for that practice, the practice of diplomacy. It is not just a question of optics, as you put it. It is a vulgar eyesore. And all around Barbados, we see these wires hanging, and it has been so now for many years. It is also a question of safety, you're quite right, because I have seen the very large trucks. In fact, in the district where I live, and where the honorable member who used to be Minister of the Environment lives, we have had instances of his ministries, as they then were, large garbage trucks, pulling down some of these same wires. And it also speaks to a third issue, which I think is the professionalism or lack thereof of the service providers. Because if we can drive around and see it, I am sure that the very highly paid executives in charge of these service providing companies are also seeing it. And it is an alarming thing to me that this could be going on for so long and there be no intervention. But I ask that the FTC speak to the matter.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, through you. Unfortunately and regrettably, the specific matter that's raised, the infrastructural positioning of lines, et cetera, is not something that falls under the mandate of the Fair Trading Commission. However, I think that this again speaks to what I had brought up previously in my response to the question raised about the future of the FTC. We have been, within the last 3 years, engaged with the telecoms unit on other matters related to quality of service. And the quality of service standards speak specifically to the ability of the consumer to utilize their electronic communication devices. Under our mandate, we have responsibility for economic regulation and also for those standards, those quality of service standards. But however, I think that the future of the FTC could very well include greater involvement with stakeholders such as the telecommunications unit, a greater collaboration in that engagement, so as to ensure that those types of standards are also discussed as a whole-of-government approach to issues. It is an unfortunate thing, not only in terms of the aesthetics, but as you alluded to as well, the safety consideration. In a previous life, I was heavily involved in the in managing electrical infrastructure, let's say. And because of that, I feel very strongly about the fact that consideration has to be given to the safety aspect, not only for those who may unfortunately uproot the poles because they've pulled on the lines, but also the public at large who operate within the vicinity. So it is a critical issue. I unfortunately cannot give you a response that offers much assistance, but I would say that we will engage with the telecommunications unit. We will collaborate with the telecommunications unit to try to see what solutions can be arranged as urgently as possible.
I want to thank you, Mr. Reese, because your answer has illuminated, obviously, a little bit of a lacuna, a loophole, which we now have to plug. And clearly in fact, it has provoked conversation between the Deputy Permanent Secretary, myself, and the PS himself as to what next steps should be. Because I want to assure you, Honourable Minister, that your question is pertinent and the concern is real as far as I'm concerned. And the Ministry of Energy will follow up to try to see where resolution should properly lie and to do the necessary engagements. Because this problem is not just in a parish or in a district, it is seen island-wide. And it is not just bad, it has been getting worse for a long period of time. And I'm sure that everybody in Barbados could agree with that.
Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up question, Senior Minister, I agree with you that there is a lacuna. And in addressing it, I would also want for you to take into consideration the service deliverables of the service providers as well. For example, it took all of 4 weeks for one service provider to address a fallen line in a community in my constituency. And then if you were to be traversing Barbados, somewhere between South District and St. George down to Bussa, if you're using your mobile phone, you have no service, it just drops out. On the highway as well, you dare not have an online meeting traveling in your vehicle on certain parts of Barbados because you can very well be cut off from that meeting due to the poor service delivery. And I would like to think that in a space like this in the 21st century, that service providers are held accountable for service deliverables that people are paying for. And I would like, in addressing the lacuna, that this is something that you can take on board as well.
I believe, Honourable Member, that it might be worth hearing from Mr. Reese, because I do think that we have now entered, if not trespassed upon, his jurisdiction.
Thank you again, Senior Minister. I believe I would have mentioned previously, we had actually received a directive from Cabinet to look at this specific issue many years ago. And unfortunately, COVID intervened, a number of other issues intervened. And I will be very honest and say that, unfortunately, it has not been executed upon. The FTC, however, within that intervening period, had created the quality of service standards that would speak specifically to those matters. What we need to do now, as I mentioned previously, is ensure that the collaboration between all of the various ministries, all of the entities that have the responsibility for, one, the legislative review and amendment, as well as the implementation of the quality of service standards, and then ultimately the engagement with the service providers so they better understand what we expect, not only as regulators, but as consumers as well. Then hopefully, in a very short space of time, we will be able to see it. But unfortunately, at this point in time, the regulatory limitation is that the legislation does not allow us to manage that particular aspect. But we are seeking to have it changed in as urgent a manner as possible. Legislative reform, not only within the telecom sector, but within the, well, as far as Utility Regulatory Act is concerned, and all aspects of the legislation that bears upon the Fair Trading Commission is to be looked at within this financial year to try to see how we can stay abreast of the needs of the consumers, stay ahead of the issues before they present themselves in a proactive way, and ensure that, as I mentioned before, that we're providing the services that are expected of us, not only to consumers, but also to businesses as well. So that legislative change is really the crux or the focal point of the change that you're asking for.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Rees. I want to say to you that my senior team will reach out to you or your team with a view to us pooling our resources to advance this particular issue and to wrestle it to the ground. And my PS is reminding me that even as we do so, we have to look at the capacity building which is necessary within the FTC as well. So that is useful work that will come out of the questions asked by the Honourable Member for St. Philip South, and I'm grateful to you, Minister.
And Chair, my final follow-up question. And Senior Minister, I really do appreciate the feedback, especially the assurance that you've given to address the matter and building capacity within the FTC. So I guess it's upon that that I also ask that you consider the increase in rates that consumers sign an agreement for, but would face increased charges without consultation to them. For example, you may take out a package that gives you a certain amount of Wi-Fi, entertainment, etc. You may lose some of your channels, but the prices don't go down. And in fact, you see a reflected increase in prices from the service providers without consultation. And consumers are being asked to pay those prices or they're being disconnected. And this is something that us as a government need to address post haste.
And again, Minister, I, in the absence of having been briefed, I know the problem. In fact, I have myself experienced the problem. But I would want to hear what the FTC's response to you would be on this issue.
Thank you, Senior Minister. I would wish first, if you don't mind, Senior Minister, through you, Chair, to go back to the previous comments we made on the capacity building as far as the quality of service standards are concerned. I would not wish it to be, I would not wish it to appear as though that is really the crux of the issue. The issue really is that we need to have legislative changes to the telecommunications legislation. And that, unfortunately, does not fall under the auspices of the FTC. That is something that is managed in another partner ministry. So I think that more collaboration, which we have already started, which we are constantly encouraging, I think will help that situation. So I just want to make sure that we are very precise about what the real change needs to be to achieve the goal that you've mentioned. With regard to the matter of provision of services, changing services, services being changed unilaterally without notice, this is something, as you've said, we have observed occurring frequently within the market. And we're approaching it not from a utility regulatory perspective, because again, I reiterate, that is not part of the utility regulatory mandate that we have. However, we have been approaching it under our consumer protection mandate, insofar as our responsibility to ensure that the consumers get what they have contracted to get. The Consumer Protection Act is very clear about the fact that unilateral changes such as those should not occur. And we have been engaging with the various service providers to ensure that that does not occur. We have been engaging with our consumers to understand how they have been affected in terms of payment for services not received. And we have sought through the Mobile Telecommunications Code that I would have mentioned in my previous comments to ensure that at any point in time when refunds can be obtained, that we very frontally and very aggressively seek to obtain those for consumers. So we are very aware of the issue that consumers have raised, and we are on top of it trying to ensure consumers are not affected and that the service providers, most importantly and primarily, do not cause those issues to be to come to your attention.
Okay, I want to thank you, Mr. Reese. And again, perhaps it is best for us to have conversations not here, but behind closed doors. I think it makes for a more tidy way of treating to some of these issues. In the minds of the consumer, and I am one, the issue of loss of service during calls, the issue of dead zones, where in my constituency, I know that it is pointless my trying to make a cell phone call in certain parts of the constituency because it's just not going to be the quality that it would be elsewhere in Barbados. And I've heard this or experienced it in other parts of the island. But these are things that I don't think we should be interrogating you on here. I think there are issues that perhaps we may more tightly and usefully be able to deal with in a more structured way. But we will have those conversations. I thank you for the candid nature of your response. And I hope, Honourable Minister, that though I am sure you're not fully satisfied, that you may be willing to agree that you have opened not a Pandora's box, but an avenue for resolution of a problem. Thank you.
Senior Minister, I wish to thank you sincerely. And I am sure that you do appreciate that I'm satisfied that you will do your best to make sure this matter is addressed. And I leave it up to you and Brother Reese. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
Wait a second.
The question is that I do now report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 5 minutes past 4.
The question is that this Honourable Chairman will be suspended until 5 minutes past 4. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands suspended until 5 minutes past 4. This sitting is resumed. Standing Finance Committee will continue.
This House is now in Standing Finance Committee. Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Minister, in your intervention so far, much of what you have said has related to economic progress. The Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan 2026 has as its first pillar competitiveness, productivity, and growth. And as the Minister now responsible for Economic Affairs, that is also meant to be the core of the work that the Ministry of Economic Affairs delivers in the context of BERT 2026. Now, the issues of competitiveness, productivity, and growth cause us to, as an economy, as a government, to have to really put on our thinking caps. Because in a small economy such as ours, there are certain limits to growth by volume, as you well know. And more, we have to look at value growth, as you've intimated in your remarks, and also increases in marginal productivity that we are able to get from getting better output from labor, better output from technology, better output from all of the inputs that we're putting in. So this is what is before us in terms of BERT 2026. This is what is before the ministry that I have some responsibility for. Minister, in your ministry, you have an officer, an economist that was spirited away from economic affairs some years ago in the dead of the night, who at the time was working with us, and I had cause to pull up the paper that he and I had been working on those years ago. He had been working with us on a new competitiveness framework for Barbados. And under that framework, what was contemplated and some of the work that was begun was, Minister, you were a key part of that, this Doing Business Subcommittee of Cabinet and this Doing Business Public-Private Sector Committee that we had established. I thought that was important work. It was a hands-on committee that was meant to look at addressing some of these competitiveness issues. There is now a proposal to return to that work, really, by setting up a competitiveness commission that really will have to look at the individual issues. How long does it take a planning application? How long for a water connection? Issues of connectivity that were just raised by a previous speaker. So my question to you has to do with, even though Business Barbados is off book, is now meant to be self-sufficient and running its own operation, the work of Business Barbados is so critical. It is really at the core of how we're able to help improve our competitiveness and productivity and ultimately growth. What I would like to hear is what have been the improvements in real deliverables, in key indicators such as the time that various processes take, that will allow us to return to being able to measure and report improvement with respect to our competitiveness and productivity.
Thank you, Minister. I want to say to you that I believe that the officer in charge of Business Barbados, Tamisha Rochester, is perhaps even better placed than I am, given the fact that I am only returning to this ministry a couple of weeks ago, to speak to you with precision on the improvements that have been made and the key indicators that are now implemented. And what I can say is that there is now an entire arm of that Business Barbados enterprise, perhaps I should call it, institution, which is meant to deal with facilitation of business and improving and enhancing the ease with which business is done in Barbados. But in the interest of time, let me just invite Mr. Rochester to take the floor.
Thank you, Senior Minister. Please excuse me. So I will start with the first question or the question about the indicators. And I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we are doing differently that we've never done before was to drive our service delivery and our transformation by data. Before it was driven by anecdote and assumption. And one of the things that we implemented over the past year is our customer experience branch model, where we have focused on our clients' expectations on the in-branch journey with us and capturing the data that supports where we need to make changes. So for example, we capture now customer satisfaction scores in the branch on a daily ongoing basis. And these are complemented by detailed operational metrics, which include things like daily foot traffic volumes. And that is approximately 1,500 to 1,700 persons in the branch monthly. And we've tracked wait times, and we've been able to see where the wait times have increased with some of the measures that we've implemented in the branch model. So the wait time is now down to 16 to 21 minutes per individual, down from approximately 45 minutes to an hour. And for CTSPs, especially the corporate or trust service providers and the agents with large accounts or with more complex transactions who would have spent at least 90 minutes to 2 hours in some instances, depending on the number of companies they represent, their wait times are now 41 to 60 minutes. Excuse me, my apologies. As we said, we use this data to track our progress, and we also track the data in terms of the processing of applications. So for example, we have already processed over 8,000 digital applications for the year, and hundreds of paper applications that we have had in backlog have been processed during the year as well. So what I'm mainly trying to say is that we are using the data, and we continue to use the data to improve the service, to improve the competitiveness, to show us where we need to make further improvements and to show us what is working. The customer experience branch model I spoke about, we were able to use the data to separate out those large clients from the regular average Joe on the street who's just coming to do one small transaction, and basically deploy dedicated customer experience agents to those large CTSPs, along with structured appointment systems for the service providers to reduce congestion, personalized case management for complex transactions, and continuous service monitoring, as I mentioned.
Thank you. I confess that I was not able to hear too clearly all of the response. I may have missed it, but what I had been hoping to hear was some clear targets, benchmarks, that you would say it takes 2 days to open a business, it takes, and to have those, to come to the place where we have those kind of emblazoned across the website or the government of Barbados website to say, well, here in Barbados, these are the things that you can do. Perhaps that is where you're going. And ultimately, I think that that's what we will have to be aiming for, to be able to say that we're reaching success in this regard, because it has seemed at times as if we were progressing with a fully online system, then some things were back offline. And I think that clients have been experiencing some confusion there, but it sounds as if you are aware that these are the targets. Still, my first follow-up question, still in the area of competitiveness and productivity. There were some earlier references to vending. Of course, this-
Minister, if, before you go on to vending, just, I hate to interrupt you in full flight, but I think to do justice to your very important question, I would invite either the PS himself or Ms. Rochester, who would have been, obviously both of them would have been going through the, what were the inception stages of this new Business Barbados iteration, so that they can explain to you why we are not yet at a stage where we can properly say it takes X days or X hours or whatever to do whatever process action is contemplated. Ms., which one of you wish to go?
Thank you, Senior Minister, and I do apologize. I seem to be losing my voice a bit, so I have some challenges there, so my apologies, you weren't able. I'm trying to speak as loudly as I can in the circumstances. So yes, that is where I was going as well. Business Barbados inherited legacy systems that are no longer fit for purpose and were built for a different time. When we spoke, I believe a year ago, we indicated that we were changing these systems, and that change has been occurring. And the purpose of that change is to get us to the point where we can have these metrics and we can have certainty in the systems. As you would appreciate, operating on a legacy system that is not functioning in the way that it should, it is very difficult, and it hampers the progress that we are trying to make. So whilst we are keeping systems going, we do have to make sure that we are up and running using what we have. I explained earlier in my intervention that we spent the last year not only building and strengthening our digital infrastructure, but also reworking or relooking the workflows, deconstructing and reconstructing, and all of the various elements that have to come together with a new and improved digital landscape to allow us to be competitive and to remain competitive. And importantly, we're not structuring or layering these systems on existing problematic legacy systems. And I think that is the reason why we have taken this time, because it is really going to the root of the issue and not just building upon what is there to create further issues. So whilst we have laid that foundation, where a lot of it behind the scenes, what you will see in the 2026 to 2027 year now is the rollout. So what does this mean? The rollout of our new structured, reinforced systems that allow us to be able to be efficient, to operate quickly, to operate smoothly, and not be hampered by the setbacks of using systems that are not fit for purpose. So this work is at a very advanced stage, and it has happened behind the scenes, because building systems does happen behind the scenes, but it is at a stage where testing has been done, foundation has been laid, new environments have been acquired, systems have been moved, and that move has been completed onto the new environment. Digitization is in progress, new system is in progress, and we are getting there to the stage where we can have that certainty of process and certainty of timelines, supported by systems, supported by legislation, and supported by process that makes sense in 2026.
Thanks very much for that. Now, in the area of competitiveness and productivity, there was earlier discussion about vending and reference to the National Vending Policy Framework. I believe that as a part of that framework, whenever we seek to expand rights, which the vending policy rightly does, we also have to look to secure commitment to responsibilities. That is the balance that I always champion, rights and responsibilities. Now, I would imagine that part of the objective of the vending policy framework was also to bring a certain order and regulation to the sector. I think, however, that some of what we are seeing does not go in that direction. And that while you want to give certainty and predictability to the vendors and to make sure that they are properly placed as members of our important private sector, which they are, that there's also a certain regulation of how vending takes place that must also accompany that. I think that we are seeing now, regrettably, a bit of a return to some of the disorder that we were trying to bring some balance to, where we see people who are vending in places that put their lives at risk and put other people at risk, who are operating without the requisite systems that through your work, through this ministry's work, are now a little bit more accessible. So I wanted to hear a bit about how we expect to be able to bring some balance to what we are seeing across the country. This administration has perhaps done the most to help advance the rights of people who occupy this part of the private sector. However, too far east is west. And I think we have to make sure that just as we regulate every other sector and every other operator, that we also bring some balance to this sector.
Thank you for the question, and it gives me an opportunity to speak to this matter a little bit more fulsomely. You're 100% right. Where we have rights, we must have responsibilities, Minister. And the sector, or rather the subsector of vendors, has to reflect the level of responsibility and commitment to orderly business conduct in the same manner and to the same degree as any other business sector must in this country. The fact of the matter is that what you are seeing is a byproduct of the fact that the Act itself, which governs vending, the vending bill went to Parliament and went through all of its stages, but then was never proclaimed. So there is no proclaimed legislation there that allows for the guardrails that are built into the Act to be taken out of a state of suspension where they now are, and to be utilized in order to bring the level of regulatory enforcement that you are asking about. That proclamation will have to take place very shortly. Why was that proclamation not yet done? I had referred earlier when the Honourable Member for St. Peter asked me about the sector. I had pointed out to him, I think his question was more along the lines of what he understood to be the tardy nature of the process unfolding. I had pointed out to him that there were some realities that we had to meet, one of which was that the Act itself gives, as you quite rightly made the point, certain rights to the vending community. Those people responsible for orderly conduct or regulating and enforcing orderly conduct of vending in Barbados must be given the opportunity to go into a zone where vending is taking place. And if, for example, there is public works that need to be conducted, have vendors relocate from the spot where they are to somewhere else so that that work can be done in the interest of the greater good of the country. If, however, the vendor resisted such a move, then the law will entitle the people who have enforcement authority to move the vendor and or his goods. Prior to that, in the old way we did things in Barbados, the vendor would have no recourse in law. So the policeman, as we've seen several times in Bridgetown, could come and, let's be very blunt with the language, skin over the tray of fruit, and the big policeman, size 12 boot, stand up on the grapes and the mangoes and everything, and there is no recourse in law for the vendor. That cannot now happen because the vendor is entitled to bring an action against the government of Barbados if he is treated in that way. And therefore, the other thing that arose was how then do we how we store people's goods and take care of them as we would have to in circumstances of that nature. And the Ministry of Agriculture had to be the place where satisfactory arrangements were built out, literally physically built out, to store these types of commodities. And some of them would obviously have to be refrigerated commodities. So that process took a little while. We are there now where we can go forward with the legislation, but part of what you are seeing that has developed in Barbados is a level of disorderliness in the way in which business is being conducted alongside our roads. That cannot, however, become the cultural practice that is accepted. And therefore, once the vending zones start now to be rolled out, and we are, as I said, there at this point, I believe you two honorable members should have gotten a letter on my behalf indicating that we are desirous of you signaling to us where you would want to have your zone or zones. Then we will be able to treat to those matters as we go forward. So I'm with you. I think your observation is 100% correct. It is just that we are seeing the byproduct of the fact that we try to bite off more than we could chew at the point when we went about this initial effort.
Thanks for your frankness on that, Minister. Finally, you know, the question of competitiveness is also one that has to consider cost, the cost of inputs, the cost of the items that businesses will be using to either create their final product or service or to sell on. So so cost of living and prices go to the heart of what we are talking about when we talk about competitiveness. There is a Department of Commerce in these estimates that I do have to note has as an objective in this next financial year the creation of a consumer price index, which I have to caution you is the sole authority of the Barbados Statistical Service. There has to be one source of truth for inflation and the consumer price index that is generated at the national level. So I want to make sure that there's no confusion there. But what I am coming to is the question of how that department has been able to do work to address cost of living issues. And to hear a bit about what Barbadians can expect by way of impact from the efforts that have been undertaken by that department in the ministry to seek to give Bajans and businesses some relief in that regard.
Minister, I think that the first thing that we would have to say is that there have been interventions made by the Department of Commerce with regard to working with the executive of the country in order to give us the statistical data support and also the monitoring support surrounding the prices and not incomes, it's just really a prices protocol, which we had a compact, that's the word I was looking for, the prices compact, which was put in place around 2023, and some of which still exist today, even though the formal compact came to an end after the period of 12 months. And you will recall that at that time, we would have had the retail sector join with the government of Barbados and the the trade unions in Barbados, in particular the Barbados Workers Union, to agree that we would hold, or they would hold, markups down to around 10%, and in some cases 12 or 15% for certain products, when previously the markups that were being issued, made, given in the private sector were as high as 35%. So that immediately was one area where the Department of Commerce was of tremendous assistance to us. I think in more recent times, we have seen the Department of Commerce's innovative usage of the information technology so as to design an app called Ask Delia, very similar in concept to the Ask Pearly app that will allow for any consumer at any point in Barbados to go online and check and do a price comparison study with regard to the cost of food at supermarkets. I don't know if I should properly name the supermarkets here, but there are a few supermarkets which are used as the subject of the price comparison. And that I'm made to understand has been working remarkably well, and that it is a very widely used app in Barbados right now. But obviously, Minister, I want to be candid with the House. In my judgment, there's still far more work to go. There are miles to trod before we sleep. And this is one of the areas where I think we have to be very frank. In many countries around the world, and the Director of Commerce knows this, I have told him this before, the Commerce Department drives the United States economy. And I want to see it drive the Barbados economy. There are issues that we must get right. There's legislation in draft, for example, and it has to come to the House. You know, because you've carried this legislation yourself, the metrology legislation, which really is basically about making sure that poor people don't get robbed at the petrol pump, or when you go in the supermarket and you weigh something on the scale, that the scale is not robbing you blind. And quite frankly, it works in the reverse, that the people who sell are not robbing themselves blind because of the fact that they have not maintained equipment. But it goes further than that. It takes us into the way in which we are dispensing gasoline at the gas station, and that that which you pay for at the pump is not really reflecting what you get. And in some cases, that may well be the case. But every nickel, every dime, as the Americans would put it, can result in loss to the consumer that amounts to several hundreds of dollars in a day, or perhaps even millions of dollars in a year. So these are things that we have to, these are interventions that we have to make. That is legislation, as I said, that is already in draft. But there must be more active interventions in our economy legislatively that seek to restore balance between consumer and business, and equally that unlock opportunities for business people and so on. So I don't want to belabor the point. I think it would be useful, Honourable Minister, if we heard the voice of the Director of Commerce and Consumer Affairs himself, because I would want to think that he has had much time to reflect on not only what we've been saying, you and I, but on this subject matter, and that we give him an opportunity to share his thoughts. He's there? Yeah.
Yes, good afternoon. Bertram Johnson, Director of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. I just want to thank the Honourable Minister for the question. I want to thank Senior Minister for setting the context for me to speak this afternoon. Just to address your first concern, let me just rest assured that we are not looking to duplicate with the consumer index. We are actually looking to do a consumer confidence index and not a consumer price index, because we understand the CPI is within the remit of the economic affairs. But suffice to say, the Department of Commerce will work closely with all stakeholders, including Tax Department. And the reason I say that is that around the COVID period, around the Ukraine-Russia war, we saw the escalation of prices in Barbados, and at that time we thought it fit for the Department of Commerce to build out a data analytics framework that would be useful basically in capturing, monitoring, and analyzing data, particularly price data for food. And it is out of that we thought that this intervention, as the Minister spoke about us being a more modern commerce department, we thought data analytics should be driving a lot of policy decision making, and out of that we have developed our data analytics framework. But we also deepened that to modernize it into what we will call a price transparency platform through Price Check, which we launched in October the 24th, 2024. And the genesis of Price Check was basically to give price transparency of supermarket prices across Barbados. And we thought that this intervention using the data analytics framework that we had would have, on two occasions. One, it created a de facto competition policy where no persons had the opportunity, and supermarkets or retailers, to see prices in one space. And secondly, it reduced what I call opportunistic pricing. Because now you have transparency in data, you would have retailers also looking at the information and realizing that they're actually pricing themselves out to the market. And what our experience was is that prices start to come back in line to average. Those that were out were actually coming back into the mean of prices. So we thought that that intervention, starting with our data analytics framework, would have led to some level of competitive pricing in Barbados. I just want to say also that our data analytics framework is robust in the sense that if there are, because we have data back from 2018, if there are any semblance of where you would want to think that prices are converging, let me use that word, I don't want to say colluding, that we can also do the deeper analytics through the coefficients of variation, your economists, to see if that is actually occurring in the market, and we can make policy interventions or recommendations, let me put it that way. So we believe that we have pivoted as a Department of Commerce more from a monitoring side to more of an analytics kind of a mechanism through the establishment of our data analytics framework. With Price Check, we saw some great success there. We saw that persons now had access to information where they can stand in the comfort of their homes, and they could have looked at basically the prices of supermarkets across 12 retail supermarkets. But we didn't stop there because the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs is acutely aware of the structural dilemma that small island developing states face regarding high cost of living, and that these higher costs is really exogenously determined by global inflationary pressures, by high import fuel costs, or even the disruption of global supply chains. And why did I say that? Because all of that, if they converge, can lead to price instability. So we believe that Price Check, while being a price monitoring mechanism, was useful, but we sought to even go deeper. And the question that we ask ourselves is, basically, how can we address cost and living issues in a way that we can also incorporate the income side interventions? And it's out of that understanding that we said that Price Check should be rebranded to Ask Delia. And Ask Delia is really an online one-stop shopping platform that not only populate the prices of supermarket prices in one space, but inside of Ask Delia, we thought it fit to also create a small business page where we believe that if we can start to promote the visibility of small business and build entrepreneurs and SMEs in a way that they can add and develop to the economy, that would have been a useful initiative. We also sought to have integrated there a deals page. So in talking about cost of living issues, we believe that now the retailers have an opportunity and consumers to go to the deals page to see where deals are actually being dispensed across different various supermarkets. We also have a smart calendar, so therefore you can stand in the comfort of your home and you can start to have an indicative idea of what your bill will be before you leave home. But doing that in a manual system was not the optimum solution. And I think one of the successes was that we were able to now have 5 supermarkets actually provided the Department of Commerce point of sale information. And this is now moving towards no-time data being collected by the department. So therefore, the efficacy and the accuracy of the data is now bolstered. And it is in that regard that now Ask Delia becomes a very powerful tool, because now you're getting supermarkets moving towards submitting point of sale information every Friday. Our data analytics framework is refreshed and it pushed right through Price Check, which is the back engine to Ask Delia, and you can have those prices there. But we didn't stop there. I will close on this. We now have developed a mobile app. And when we're speaking about cost of living issues, how do we help our customers? Our mobile application will now send notifications to customers throughout Barbados when supermarkets or retailers have deals that can be shot straight up through the mobile application, and you can get a notification to your smartphone saying that a particular supermarket have this particular product at a reduced price. We believe this is the innovative and transformational agenda that the Department of Commerce should take. But we even went further because in the beta phase now we have what we call an AI chat box. We are in the age of AI technology. And now at Delia, you can probably, in the beta phase, and we'll be testing it, you can now speak and say, well, I have 300 as my budget constraint. I want to shop on these 12 items. It will search the database and it will give you those products at the most competitive price. Across searching and scraping the information within our data and framework. Minister, I believe that these interventions go a far way in terms of how we can tackle, how we can address, how we can share the work that is necessary to manage price increases. And I will end here because I understand my time is limited. I will leave another question if it so be. But we believe also that the minister alluded to this. We have to reimagine what we do as a Department of Commerce. So even now, we are actually looking to design inside of our data framework what the commodity, what I call global commodity tracking of key indicators, whether it be fuel, whether it be feeds. Also, we're looking to do scenario modeling to see if ship and freight costs go up, what is the knock-on effect to other things in our economy in terms of prices, and also develop early warning systems so that we can proactively manage any supply chain disruptions. This is where we are, and we are even going further. So I hope with those few remarks that I give some semblance of what we are doing. It would be remiss of me if I didn't give some analytics in terms of what Stelia has done or performed. To date, it was launched, as I said, on November the 21st, 2025. We have at least already 500,000 hits. And outside of that, we have almost 250 page reviews, and the unique visitors almost trending towards 10,000. So I said that, and I punctuated that in there to say that Axdelia is being looked at as a mechanism to assist persons in addressing and managing their price, any price increases in Barbados so that they can get the best out of the best prices as we seek to populate them and work with our stakeholders. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Senior Minister, I note that very few people have asked anything about natural gas. And you know, as 23 years ago, I started my career in government as the chairman of Natural Gas Corporation, and people remind me and remember that in some ways, I'm still the chairman. And the first thing I wanted to ask about is an expansion program. Clearly, many of our constituents come to us asking about natural gas because they see it as a cleaner and cheaper fuel. And I wanted to ask if in your ministry there are any plans to expand the natural gas grid throughout Barbados.
Thank you very much for the predictable question, Honourable Member. We have a colleague, a former colleague of ours at school, Honourable Member, by the name of James Brown, who is CEO of the National Energy Company, officer in charge of the National Energy Company. And I would ask that he position himself to field this question in part. But let me just say to you, I think I should say a few things that I think are critically important, especially on a day like today where we are hearing news to the effect that natural gas is, 20% of the world's production of natural gas will be shut down as a result of the war between the United States and Iran, and that situation is likely to get worse. At present, we import 52 cylinders of gas a month, and we use 13 cylinders a week. So effectively, we are importing exactly what we use on a monthly basis. And as I understand it, it is, and Mr. Brown can correct me, I believe it is sourced from Miami with some redundancy from Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. But the issue I think that is most critical for us is the fact that 75% of the domestic demand in Barbados. 75% is now imported, not produced here, but we are importing it. And when I was minister in 2022, that figure was in the vicinity of 45 to 50%. So our situation in terms of our natural gas production on island has gotten worse, not better. And I think you will recall from your days as chairman, honorable member, that there are really only two options that face us in those circumstances if we are to get around the reality of trying to plan out an expanded program of delivery of natural gas across this island in circumstances where global prices are, well, right now, high and getting higher. But even when they settle, there's still going to be the capital works, which is going to be required to do an expanded program across Barbados. We have to therefore think in terms of enhanced recovery of the natural gas, which would mean going into the existing wells and see whether we can eke out an additional 5 to 10%. And the technological way of doing that is not something I'm going to try to belabor the House with. And I'm not even sure I'm competently able to properly do so, so I will not try. And then secondly, have a drilling program, which will enable us hopefully to find new onshore wells. The fact of the matter is that that too comes at great capital costs. So having said that, I hope I've laid the foundation in your mind, honorable member, for the fact that whatever we do in terms of getting more, the ideal of getting more natural gas distributed around Barbados is going to be at this stage a costly and capital intensive proposition and exercise. If Mr. Brown has taken his position at the table, then I will yield the floor to him.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honorable members. Thank you, Senior Minister, for leading from in front. Over the last couple of years, the natural gas portfolio has been challenged. The balance sheet of the corporation was quite challenged, and it was very difficult to exercise an expansion program. Over the last couple of months, since October of 2025, the National Petroleum Corporation amalgamated with the BNECL to form one company. Now, hopefully, with that joining of the two forces, you will have a better right sizing of the balance sheet, better perspectives. The minister spoke about onshore drilling. That's quite challenging too. We will look to see if we can do more drilling. But before we do any drilling, we have to do a seismic analysis of what we have. We have to do more economic analysis to see if it makes sense to drill or if there's any productivity as a result of drilling. Over the last couple of years, we've been importing more LNG. We've imported it from Miami, Puerto Rico, several places across the region. That has been used to supplement the natural gas. Now that comes at a higher cost. I mean, right now, we have slight margins now with regards to natural gas. The LNG is quite expensive. Right now, we import 6 million gallons of LNG per year, which is approximately 75% of what we use locally. The goal over the next couple of years, hopefully, is that we can expand what we started with the small LNG imports to import a little greater so we could get economies of scale. The other off-takes that we are looking at, which include ship bunkering. We've been bunkering ships over the last couple years. We've moved the revenue from bunkering from $100,000 a year to over $2 million a year. Hopefully, with the expansion of the LNG portfolio, we can get this a little bit. Our goal is to get this over $10 million in the next couple of years too as well. But to get that point, we need to import more gas. We need to work with the utility power to see if we can use that bulk mass to get more economies of scale. And with economies of scale, we can get better pricing. And with better pricing, we should be able to hopefully expand across the region.
Thank you very much, Minister and Mr. Brown. And I fully agree with you. By using economies of scale, as you know, many more of the cruise ships are now using LNG. And then the opportunities then to be able to supply cruise ships with LNG, and then the local people getting the benefit of those economies of scale gives us an enhanced opportunity to get back to where it was, which is to expand the natural gas grid for constituents, which is what we get asked all of the time. My second and follow-on question, Senior Minister, has to do with new technologies. Now, remember, I did say that 23 years ago, I was the chairman, and we used to dig to put down pipe. Now there's a lot of no-dig technology. Is the Barbados National Energy Company using any types of new no-dig technology to be able to lay pipe for natural gas expansion? And if not, why not?
I understand your considerable interest in laying pipe technology, but I will ask Mr. Brown to speak to it. Honourable Member.
Over 10 years ago, the National Petroleum Corporation started a new no-dig technology where we would drill a couple of holes in the ground and drag the pipe through to lay the pipe. Because of the lack of expansion, we haven't been able to exercise this technology, but this is still something that we are looking to do and willing to do. Yeah, that's it.
The reason I ask that question is because there are many areas that you have developments and new expansions. With the Ministry of Housing looking to do 10,000 houses, it means that significant numbers of places will have new developments. And I would encourage you to get, when they're doing those developments, as we did at Berlin's in your constituency, Senior Minister, to put in and use the no-dig technology if necessary to be able to lay the pipe in anticipation that when expansion opportunities come, that the pipe will already be laid in advance of the top surfaces being done. And my final question has to do with, again, using technology and the opportunity for smart meters. In certain parts of the world, when you use your particular commodity, be it electricity or water or natural gas, and use it at off-peak times, you get preferential pricing. But that can only be done if you have smart meters. And I have not yet seen, after all this time, the same type of meters that natural gas was using 26 years ago are still being used today. And I would like to think that the corporation is looking at using smart meters and then giving consumers an opportunity to have differential pricing so that when they're using a utility, and not only natural gas, also electricity, and also water, when they're using at off-peak hours or off-peak times, that the opportunity for differential pricing comes in so that people can get additional savings and hit that cost of living problem. So the question again, are you looking at smart meters? And if not, why not?
And Mr. Brown, again, I would want to yield the floor to Mr. Brown on that operational question.
Thank you, Senior Minister. Over the last couple of years, the corporation has used some smart meters. Right now, we have our top 30 customers, which make up approximately 50% of the utilization, set up as a SCADA system, which reads directly into the computer system at the company. We've actually been looking at today, seeking to apply for a loan for the expansion of the entire commercial meter section, which makes up between 72 to 84% of the revenue stream. So yes, we are looking to utilize smart meters to also not only look for a billing system too, but also to get better accuracy, because reducing the amount of human interface with regards to reading meters brings more accuracy to the table and allows us to reduce our non-revenue gas. So that's something we're looking to do. Just to go back to what you said before about the non-digging technology, that is quite important to us too as well, because when I first joined the National Petroleum Corporation, the cost for expansion was $30 per foot. it's at $260 per foot now, which makes expansion very, very difficult because you've seen for every foot that we lay down, we have to recover it, and the price of natural gas hasn't risen consequentially. So it's very, very difficult to have a proper return on investment for any expansion right now unless we reduce the costs or we increase the rates. And rates are not something we want to increase. So we looking at the ability to reduce costs either from expansion, non-digging technology, and also bringing more LNG to the table.
Thank you, Senior Minister.
Before we just close off, Honourable Member, I think that I hope that you appreciate the challenge that we face. And it isn't for any lack of ambition with regard to expanding the network. But the reality is that there are substantial expansion costs related, and equally because we have run down our existing domestic supply of natural gas to the point where only 25% of what we use, we actually produce here, then there are going to be significant sourcing costs as well as the expansion costs. And frankly speaking, it invites the inevitable conversation on rates. And this is a matter which really goes beyond the competence of my ministry now, and I would have to give the House an undertaking that we will have to sit with the Minister of Finance and his team, because there would obviously be a consequential relationship between an effort to expand natural gas services across Barbados, given the very practical and real situation where we are with 75% of what we currently use having to be imported, and then the reality of import pricing globally, and then equally the fact that expansion costs have increased so exorbitantly over the course of the last years. And the only other alternative is equally expensive, which is to drill new wells. And so these are things in a nutshell that we're going to have to work through very carefully and systematically to find where is the best place for us to settle on these issues.
Thank you, Minister. You almost preempted my final intervention, but I thank you for that. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Michael North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, Senior Minister. I have two questions really, but again, I will separate them. This one is tied to your business development sub-program. And I will ask both questions or both sub-questions in one, so you could just give me one response and move on to the other member. One, I want to find out what are the general plans or strategies with reference to the development of the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise sector in Barbados. Of course, we know the importance of MSMEs. I think it is reported that MSMEs are some of the largest employers of Barbadians within our country. So I want to find out what are the strategies that we have under that particular sub-program for the actual development, the support of the enhancement of the MSME sector. And then the second question tied to that, I realize under that particular program that you have about $2.5 million that has been earmarked for assets under construction. And I wanted to find out what in particular that is. I think the public would benefit from knowing what that $2.5 million is being utilized for. So those are my two questions under the business development sub-program. Thank you.
I'm sensing, Honourable Member, that the day is getting long because I distinctly recall, as does my PS and my deputy, that we earlier had indicated that $2.5 million that you're referring to are for the vending zone. Yeah. But I understand. I would like the Chief Business Development Officer, Mr. Anderson Cumberbatch, to have his say or have a say on some of the policy interventions that we propose. But let me just restate that which I believe I may actually have already said in some earlier intervention, perhaps when I was speaking to the Honourable Member for St. James North on the question of the collateral registry, or no, sorry, on the MSME sector. Look, there are a few things that come immediately to mind. I am satisfied that we have to continue to work on financing mechanisms. I use this turn of phrase deliberately. There must be a menu of options for business people in Barbados. One size cap will not fit every head, and every business is not in the same position. There are some people, for example, who will be able to use the trust fund as a startup, but then there are other people who want to start up at a far larger scale, and that ain't gonna work for them. We have to be mindful of the fact that there are operational businesses that don't necessarily need capital injection, but what they need is financial opportunities to avoid being unduly burdened by late payment for the services that they have given. And I use that example when I spoke to factoring, for example, where there are businesses in the private sector of Barbados that subcontract on large contracts. It may be a large contract on building a road, a large contract building a hotel, and the tiler who did the hotel tiled 2 floors of that 4-story hotel, and somehow that person waiting 5 and 6 months and ain't get paid for doing that work. And they are living off, or sorry, the business is forced to function off of I used the term earlier today. Yes, an overdraft facility, or even a line of credit. And the interest rate that you're being asked to pay there is exorbitant. And so that's another type of financing mechanism that we have to look at. And what we propose there is the factoring alternative. Equally, I think we have to reduce the administrative burden on some of the businesses, and I think that in many ways we can do this through greater use of the digital technology. A business must be able to interface with the Ministry of Public Works or any other place and do the things it must do, meet its obligations. If you have to get in a motor car and go and stand up in a line and wait for that to happen, then you are losing precious hours where you could otherwise be focusing on your client. And frankly speaking, we didn't talk about it today, but that is one of the reasons why the electronic single window becomes so important, because the electronic single window really is providing us with a digital space where you have a one-stop shop platform, and it will allow those people who are engaging in international or cross-border trade to do their declarations, their permits, their certificates, their licenses, whatever they may have to do via a single entry point. And you have great transparency. And again, that's one of the things that we've been wrestling with, if I am to be honest with this House. The governments of Barbados, plural, the administrations that have led Barbados, plural, have been wrestling with this issue since 2006. And we're in 2026. So this is nothing about which we can collectively be proud. And I think I will yield the floor to Mr. Cumberbatch. The other point that I made earlier, and I do believe is critical, indispensable, is the question of standards. Because standards training for me helps us to use this country as a practice wicket for our business people. If our business people can score runs on this practice wicket called Barbados, then they have the confidence to go to the regional space and play the same game with the same shots, but do it with a degree of certainty and hopefully a degree of success. And if they can do that in the region, then they have the confidence to go extra regionally into Latin America or elsewhere. But if we don't start now to work on the standard setting, then we don't lift our standards. Our people, our consuming public themselves are becoming more and more aware of best practices around the world because our people travel, our people trade online, our people watch television and so on. So they are aware of what is happening out there and they expect it here. If our businesses here can't lift their game, then you can't satisfy the Barbadian. And if you can't satisfy the Barbadian at home, your business is almost doomed to fail. So I think that standards is, again, an indispensable part of the conversation. But But I yield the floor to Mr. Cumberbatch, who I hope by now is in his place.
Thank you, Senior Minister. I would want to frame my response by looking at two initiatives which the ministry has undertaken. One being the amendment to the National MSME policy, and secondly, the development of a strategic plan and roadmap to operationalize this policy. Now, in the first half of the discussion today, the minister spoke about the issues affecting the sector, where we look at that 2016 study. And in 2016, we saw that there were issues related to access to finance. There was a non-collaborative approach to MSME development. We operated in silos. There was a non-competitive sector. There was a need for relevant business information. And there was a limited use of technology. And therefore, that allowed us to pivot to develop an amendment to the national policy, occasioned by the exogenous shocks that were adversely impacting the sector, and the need to identify opportunities for growth and entrepreneurship, and to facilitate MSME sustainability. Within that policy framework, we saw the need to identify the constraints hampering the development of the MSMEs in Barbados, to develop and improve MSME entrepreneurial framework, design a business resilience and business continuity framework, and identify those areas where by innovation we could have improved the sector, and generally to look at the whole issue of financing again. In this regard, the policy prescriptions that were enunciated within that amended policy were to facilitate business continuity and resilience, promote sustainability within the wider business ecosystem. We look at the whole issue of digital transformation, and then we look at the innovative capacity within the MSME sector. Coming out of this, as I said, the strategic plan was developed. The strategic plan hinges on 4 thematic pillars. One being governance. The whole aim is to strengthen the legislative and regulatory framework and institutional framework. This includes incentivizing formalism. While we know that there are a number of informal businesses, we want to transition them to the formal sector. There was a collaborative model called the SBDC model. We are now looking at what we call Barbados Business Exchange, which is a collaborative framework working in the technology space. The second pillar looks at finance. How do we expand financial inclusion by improving access to traditional and alternative financing instruments that allow appropriate, innovative, and affordable finance for small businesses. This includes the development of the collateral registry that the minister would have spoken about before, the establishment of credit guarantee schemes, promotion of venture capital interventions, and the reduction of a lot of the bureaucracy within the system, which has been a barrier to financial access. The third pillar look at resilience, sustainability, and competitiveness. In other words, how do we build adaptive capacity through investments in business continuity planning, innovation, technology adoption, and the quality of standards. This pillar seeks to promote areas like green and blue economy opportunities, the integration of research and development, and enhancing participation in regional and global value chains. And then the fourth segment of that strategy is entrepreneurship, promotion, and training. We're looking at how do we foster a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem that encourages creativity, inclusion, and continuous learning. And in this regard, we're looking at how do we develop youth and women entrepreneurship, how do we promote social enterprises. We're looking at capacity building and development of vibrant entrepreneurial culture across economies. So essentially, the amended policy, along with the strategic plan, seeks to
examine how do we enhance MSME development going forward in a meaningful way, in a way that it is time-bound, along with the appropriate interventions, and how do we facilitate the wider development of our MSMEs and our entrepreneurs at the local level and also globally. So these are some of the initiatives that we'll be looking at going forward. It is exciting work, and we have a team that is ready working with our stakeholders to drive the sector in a way that it can be competitive. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think the public will benefit significantly from hearing that very comprehensive plan for the development of the MSME sector. Senior Minister, I didn't hear when you had mentioned that the $2.5 million under that head was for the vending zones in particular, but I did hear you mention during the course of several interactions, the vending zones. Did you mention how many vending zones are being targeted for this year by chance? 6 vending zones this year? Okay, all right. Thank you very much for that information. I yield at this point in time, Chair.
But let me just simply say to colleagues that if this honourable member can have his way, we would be able to execute and accelerate the process so that if 6 could become a platform to go back to the Ministry of Finance for a supplemental in the interest of competitiveness and growth, then we are able to do a little more. And that is the reason why I began on the very inclusive note of making sure that everybody had submitted, because some people may require some degree of capital works that is greater than others. Other people may require, may not have a piece of publicly owned land that they can point to, and therefore you may need to have that land acquired, and that is going to be a longer process and perhaps more costly. So these are things that we must be able to work through, and the sooner we can get on the road with that, the better it really is. I'm obliged to you, honourable member, for your question.
Thank you, honourable member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My question has to do, well, it actually includes you as well. It relates to the wind farm at, I think it's called Lambert/Castle. One in constituency of St. Lucie, one in constituency of St. Peter. I'm asking the question, given the challenges we had in the past with respect to the community, the surrounding communities, and asking for an update as to where we are with respect to the plans. I know that there was established, or we were informed that there was a community liaison, but I want to find out where we are in the process, what is the level of engagement we have had with the community, and what is the feeling now in the community with respect to establishing that renewable energy infrastructure at that location.
Honourable member, thank you for that question. The wind farm will represent 30 to 50 megawatt endeavor, which will be the second wind farm on the island. The first is at Guinea, but that is only 1 megawatt, so that really does not get to what we would properly call utility scale, or if it does, it is barely there. This one is certainly at utility scale, and it will be a project that is made out of partnerships involving the International Finance Corporation is helping us to structure the transaction. We have the Barbados Light and Power on board, obviously, and there are 1 or 2 other parties who are partnering in the process. It is also going to be open for investment by the general public of Barbados. And again, this is in keeping with the principle of democratizing the energy sector, so that the plan is that you honorable member or any member of your constituency, or indeed any member of any of our constituencies, will be able to make an investment in a unit of the program. Program is perhaps not the best word, but the investment. It will be done under a unit share structure, so that there will have to be a special management placed on top of that structure, and that will bring the professional guidance. And what you then do is, if you have an interest in purchasing into it, you can buy a share, and that is therefore everybody has an interest in the value or the proceeds of the property to the extent that you have purchased an interest in it. So that unit share approach will again be the first of its kind that government has undertaken, but it really does seek now to democratize the investment in such a way that irrespective of whether you live at Lambert's or in the parish of St. Lucie or the parish of St. Peter or anywhere else in Barbados, you are able to participate in the project and derive benefits from it. With respect to the more general issues that you have raised of an operational nature and of course of a community response nature, I am certainly too recently back in the chair to be able to speak to how the community is responding. But I do know that there are people from within the community who have been able to visit. They did a study tour to Jamaica so as to see a similar type of project in operation, so that it is not going to be an investment coming to your doorstep that you are not aware of or that you don't understand the significance of or what is involved in it. It is nothing like that. Those are some of the bad ways that we have treated the people in this country in the past. That is not what is taking place here. A study tour was structured so that people from the community could go see, understand, talk with people in Jamaica about what they have experienced and develop a level of comfort with the project. I will want to invite either Mr. Brian Haynes or Mr. Delano Canterbury, not both in the interest of time, but one, to speak to the operational details and any technical issues that they may wish to enlighten the House on.
Thank you, Senior Minister. Delano Canterbury, Project Director, Project Monitoring and Coordination Team. In relation to the Lambert's and Castle Wind project, the International Finance Corporation is our transaction advisor. They are the private sector arm of the World Bank, and they have the expertise in doing wind around the world. In regard to the process that we're going through right now, we would have published the request for qualifications on November 7th. We would have received 6 submissions in that regard at the close on February 20th. We're currently in the process of evaluating those, at which stage then we would open the request for proposals, by May 29th to those who have been shortlisted. Minister would have spoken to the community liaison officer. We would have hired a community liaison officer who would have been now on his 3rd year working in the community in St. Lucie and in St. Peter. He is situated at the Rockfield Community Center, Tuesdays and Thursdays from, I believe, 4 to 6 p.m. We also would have done some materials that we would have given to the community liaison officer, and he would have been going through the communities, handing them out. We also expect to print more of those that we will be looking to go further afield within the environs of both St. Peter and St. Lucie. In terms of the project, we are also executing at this time a fair market valuation of the work which would have been done by BLPC over the years. A special purpose vehicle has already been established. I believe Senior Minister would have spoken to that. This will consist of the winning bidder, who will be the majority shareholder in the SPV, while BNECL and Barbados National Energy Company Limited and the Barbados Lake and Paul Company will hold a minority shares within the project. And as Senior Minister would have said, that we would look at the participation of individuals, Barbadians, etc., in the coming future. I think I've covered everything, I hope, and I will close there.
Thank you very much. The only thing you didn't cover was what kind of response, you spoke about the officer based at Rockfield. My question has really to do with what is the feeling among the residents with respect to this, given what had happened in the past?
Sorry about that, Minister. Yes. I think the general feeling is good within the community. There are still some concerns, which we have had 2 community meetings thus far, and we intend to have a major one, we are hoping, during this month, sorry. The community has some concerns about noise, obviously from the past history. Also the magnetic resonance, etc., in terms of health. And also the issue of will you be able to still do other forms of agriculture, etc., with the turbines in place. And we have put out a brochure that speaks to a number of these issues, as well as a calendar that goes through all of the issues that we think have been raised and have been raised by others in other societies to openly speak with the community, not trying to say yeah or nay, but to be clear and get their feedback and to explain to them if there are any concerns they have, what the experts say in that regard. So I would say that it's been positive, but there are concerns.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I don't have a follow-up question. I just would say that I'm not sure if you have received any of the materials that Mr. Scantlebury has spoken about. You haven't, I haven't, so that those who have been elected to represent those people have no information if those people ask questions, those people meaning our constituents. I'm sure I speak for the chair to say that we would want, as you share information with the residents, that you would also share with us. We're not asking to be prioritized, we're asking to be included. Thank you very much.
Point taken.
May I say, Honourable Member, that I feel a compelling need to apologize on behalf of the ministry what appears to be an oversight. I am sure it is unintended. One of the delicacies that we develop as being sitting members of Parliament is that we become acutely aware of that need for inclusion. You know where I stand on these matters, Honourable Member. Indeed, you and I had a previous exchange on inclusion earlier today, which you also benefited from. And I therefore would want to say that I am sure that it was not intended that you be excluded, and everything will be done to ensure that necessary documentation is shared with both you, Mr. Chairman, and with the Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. George North.
Yes, sure. Thanks for accommodating me. I was prepared to walk away from the issue of vending zones following the responses to the Honourable Member for St. Peter when he made his intervention on the subject. But hearing the response given to the Honourable Member for St. Michael North, I became concerned again that my original concern is still a concern, because like the Honourable Member for St. Peter, or very similar to him, the 4th of March would have marked 4 years since I emailed my submission
to have areas in Market Hill and the Glebe in St. George identified as vending zones. And since that correspondence, I had received no official correspondence, but in several follow-ups, had been advised that there was some delays, and some of those delays were confirmed again today around the issues of identifying vending zones. But Chair, the question that I have relates to my concern that there are always some low-hanging fruit, and there are some areas in which the infrastructure is already there or maybe deemed by some like myself who are not expert to be already there. For instance, in the case of St. George, where there's a market facility there, there's government land and so on, so the infrastructure should not be very difficult. And similarly in Market Hill, where there's government land available, and if you pass through that area, vendors have already set up there, although it is not designated as a vending zone, and you would want it to be formalized as such. What I'm hearing in the response to the Honourable Member for St. Michael North is that there are 6 areas identified. I may have missed that earlier. And I am also understanding that some of those areas have been contacted. So I'm just wondering, what is the process in identifying which areas are going to be on stream next? Because nobody has contacted or done the necessary research, to the best of my knowledge, to find out if the infrastructure or what is required in the areas I submitted. So what is the process in determining who goes next? Because I am of the mind that the lowest hanging fruit will make a lot of sense. Get the ones out of the way that won't require much. And I believe, sir, that the people in St. George North may be of the view that theirs don't require much. It just requires some formalization. So I would be interested to hear a response.
And the response is that I agree with you, Honourable Member. I think that there's a need for us to go, as you put it, with the lowest hanging fruit, the ones that do not need land acquisition, the ones that are publicly owned lands, the ones that are virtually shovel-ready. Those would be the easiest ones for us to start with. With regard to the question of time, I can only say to you that, first of all, you would have been approached as a direct result of a request made by me that you be approached. And I want you to take that at face value. I understand the need for this to be done across the island. And you would have had experiences where in this government, there's not always a similar approach taken to the distribution of services. So please treat that as a sign of goodwill and good faith. Secondly, it is important to recognize that all ministers are not necessarily in the same position during their tenure to prioritize a program. I have already explained both this morning and this afternoon that there were legitimate reasons why this program could not go forward, because we could not roll out the vending zones until we had gotten certain legislative requirements under the Act fixed with the Ministry of Agriculture. That has now been done. So that we are in a different position today than we might have been, let us say, this time last year. And so, therefore, the principle of those which are easiest to do will be followed. But equally, Honourable Member, I must be candid with you, as I always am, that you may find that there are 12 which are easy to do. And the budget will not allow all 12 to be done at one point. So I cannot vouchsafe that yours will automatically be among the very first, but I take your point. It is a perfectly reasoned, well-reasoned and reasonable point, and your humble servant will do his best to keep you happy.
Thank you, Chair. And just to say that I thank the Honourable Minister for recognizing that I normally more often than not, will make reasoned points and reasoned pleas. And I will anticipate as well that there may be other low-hanging fruit. And of course, I will be looking to see where these vending zones emerge, and I will make my own assessments and follow up with him as well. I say, therefore, in terms of wrapping up, that I was also glad to hear earlier on the mention made of the fact that the building itself might go to RUDC, and the other aspects of the planning and so on will be with your ministry. And I can only hope that there will be somebody coming to work, therefore, every day, and that you have the expertise on board to ensure that that planning aspect of it would not delay the building and the development that we anticipate, because we do agree that it is a mammoth task, but I believe that this government undertakes mammoth tasks because the government believes that it has the capacity to deliver, and of course it has the mandate of the people to deliver. So we will not anticipate that in 4 years' time we are only rolling out at a rate of 6 per year. We will anticipate that we can have complete vending zones all across the country, because outside of an MP wanting to see development in their areas, there are people depending on it, and people who want to feel that they're formally into the structure, like the Market Hill people I spoke about, who are setting up irrespective of the fact that it is not formally identified, but who will like to know that they are within the system doing everything that they're supposed to be doing the way they're supposed to be doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not closing officially, but I believe I am the last person to speak in this, these estimates on this particular head today. I will not go where the last two speakers have gone in terms of being parochial in any way or highlighting perhaps some of the challenges that I believe that the ministry, like all other ministries, face from time to time, namely that we have huge expectations, but sometimes we do not have the capacity to be able to deliver on the things that we have. Notwithstanding, I have had very good interactions with your ministry, Minister, both with yourself and certainly your predecessor, whether it has been with the introduction of the electric buses through the Smart Energy Fund, and I see you have about a 3.8 in these estimates as well, not just for buses, but also electric buses, but also for other electric vehicles. As it relates to the member for St. George North, who would have spoken about the issue of vending and a couple others, the reality is that I think, and I can speak firsthand to this, that some of the challenges your ministry has faced is in relation to having to outsource to other ministries some of the services related to getting the vending zones off the ground. So quite apart from the legal framework, making sure that the legislation was proclaimed, what you found, and this is for the benefit of all, is that the services, for instance, of architecture, in a sense, found its way into MTW, into our architectural services section at the time. The truth is that that should perhaps properly be placed in the ministry, in your ministry, Minister, whereby you have the relevant fees for professional services to be able to have project managers to oversee the vending zones. So I, like my colleagues, would support, yes, the building out of the vending zones. I agree with the Honourable Member for St. George North that, and we spoke about this, that I do feel that we have to look at existing areas where people are vending and to see how we can get those short wins to be able to take advantage of where people are, as opposed to trying to always create new places. I think there can be a balance in terms of the two. I've also had great success in being able to direct people, not just in my constituency, but across the country, to the trust loans. And I think that is one of our flagship initiatives as a government over the last 7 years. I have found that the officers there, I don't want to single out anyone in particular, but Mr. Amos, I think, has been extremely accessible and receptive to the interventions that were necessary. And then finally, we've had the opportunity through, at the time, MTW, to be able to work with your team under your predecessor to be able to help us to do the training for the persons who had been involved in the highway beautification. There were a number of sessions that were done, and we were able to see the upliftment of people who, in a sense, often are cast aside and are not given the help up. So I support all other colleagues as well in relation to making sure that we can not only identify resources, but that the people who really need the resources, that you find a medium through which you can articulate clearly that whatever you're looking to do in terms of entrepreneurship, that you can find those resources within your ministry. But that brings me to another segue of an area near and dear to my heart, which would be the National Financial Literacy Program. And I speak to this because I notice in these estimates that we have finally found a particular sub-program for this particular head, which I think signals government's commitment to being able to now recognize, within the last few years that we are seeing a number of our young people in particular not fully understanding and appreciating the importance of financial literacy. Many of the people that we interact with in our constituencies, it's clear that even when we have debates in this place, some things in terms of finance sometimes go completely over people's heads. Equally, some of our peers, as well as some of the older generations, simply do not understand the whole investment model, even the whole issues of borrowing and finance. And therefore, the strategy for this government, while we've been building out the financial sector and reshaping the economy, has also been to teach our people, particularly at the youngest age, a bit about what we are doing so that they too are equipped with the necessary tools that they can invest. Essentially, it is that no one color or no one class basically understands the issues of economic wealth or how to achieve economic wealth. I therefore see in your estimates, Minister, under the sub-program 586, you have 226 for professional services of 1.1 million. You also have a pretty large expense of under operating expenses 212, 5.1 million in relation to operating expenses. It does relate to the framework for the financial literacy program, but I think that given that so much is being invested, I think that this chamber and the public deserve some explanation as to how that program is working. Certainly, have we been ramping up? What are the successes of the story? And pretty much, what are the expectations in this year's estimates as it relates to what can we expect in terms of the acceptance of the public in terms of the financial literacy program?
Thank you very much, DPM. I'm going to invite Corey Worrell, who is the project coordinator for schools, to speak to this head and to this question that you have posed. But I should say to you that virtually the entire team is involved in one aspect or another of the consulting and execution. We have more monitoring and evaluation to do because we are, as I indicated before, we are now in every public primary school and every public secondary school and are going into the private schools at primary level and and we've already ventured into 4 special needs schools as well. We are doing a similar thing with regard to the businesses in Barbados, and we're into several of them. I could tell you, for example, that WIBISCO has a stand-in program, which is not only at the level of ordinary staff, but at level of management as well. The Barbados Defense Force, a similar thing. Senior officers and junior. There are many. And so the actual project itself is now taking the shape of, if I could say so, a significant success in the country. That is not to overstate it. That's just to call it as I do see it. As I had indicated before, we are into the communities, so that is the 3rd pillar, schools, business, and then communities. And we want to be in every community. In every constituency where we have a constituency, a community center, or for example, where we have constituency offices, I would want to be able to work with colleagues to make sure that those offices are opened for the purposes of facilitating, not in a political partisan way, but because there may not be any other appropriate structure for us to have people together in order to train. But the point is that online and in person, this financial literacy exercise has been galloping along. I would want to give Mr. Worrell a chance to speak his piece on this because it is, as I said, a bounty of good news.
All right, good evening. My name is Corey Worrell. I am the program coordinator for the Flight Schools program, which is the schools pillar of the National Financial Literacy Program. So the National Financial Literacy Program has as its mandate to make every Barbadian free. And let me explain what I mean by free. Financially resilient, educated, and empowered. And how we do that, we satisfy that mandate through our 3 pillars. And the pillars are schools, business, and communities. Now, DPM, you asked whether the program has scaled up, expanded, and that is a yes. So let's start with the schools program. In January of 2024, we started with 10 schools. By May, we finished with 19 schools. And in 2024-2025 academic school year, we did 64 schools. This current academic school year, 102 schools are participating in the Flight Schools program. So in 2 years, we had a 920% increase in the participating schools. Now, in 2024-2025, we did about 2,500 financial literacy sessions for the entire year. That is an entire year. For the 6 months of this academic year up to February, we surpassed that and we've done 3,645 sessions. And we are projected to do 8,000 sessions come August 31st. That alone shows how vastly the schools component has increased. Now, one of the principles we stand on in the financial literacy program is that we do not create any burdens at all to our stakeholders. That is whether it's schools, that's whether it's in the community or in the business component. So we provide, for example, in the schools, we provide all the resources to execute our program. We provide all the workbooks, and imagine moving from having 10 schools and providing all the workbooks that we produced to having 102 participating schools and have to also produce and provide those workbooks. We also provide all the materials for our facilitators. We started with 9 paid facilitators and 5 volunteers in 2024 January, and to date, we have 33 facilitators who are executing 260 financial literacy sessions a week in schools, and that's just on the schools component. Now, in the business and community components, the community component, when we say community, I don't want you to think of only of a geographic location. So yes, we have community based on those locations, but we also have community defined as relates to vulnerable groups like the elderly. We have faith-based organizations, other community groups, where we provide various interventions into those various community groups, and that too, we fully fund in that, fully fund those community groups. So the program has had significant success. Yes, we see a significant increase in the finances for this year, but that's because the demand is there and our products are working. Now, I spoke about those 3 pillars, but we also have the monitoring evaluation, the instruction design and monitoring evaluation side of things, and that also comes with a cost. We have the digital media and marketing side of things, where we are in social media, we are producing a lot of content. So the increase in finances match the growth in the program, and the program is doing extremely, extremely, extremely well. And I just got to say, I give great support, thanks to the leadership team in the ministry for providing the resources for us to do our job.
Thank you. Just a quick, I thank you for that update. I think that's very valuable and the outlook, I think, for the future in terms of people hiring persons is also good if you're in the communities and you're in the schools. But how are you actually monitoring the output? Because I'm hearing the numbers, but are you doing assessments to be able to see how people came in, but how they have improved with after, I mean, how many weeks does the program run for? How do you value the output of what you have actually done?
All right, so let me speak on the schools side as easier. We have a monitoring evaluation specialist. And in the flight schools program, we have a monitoring evaluation toolkit. So at the end of every school term, we implement our M&E framework and toolkit in the schools. And we do it in two ways. We have an assessment where we are looking to see if there's transfer of knowledge, but then we also have a feedback survey to obtain how the students feel about the program. The last 2 years we did the evaluation, we had a 75.5% pass rate in 1 year, and then we had 78.5% in the second year. In our evaluation, in our assessment regarding the feedback as it relates to satisfaction, we've had well over 86% both years. So the M&E is done through the toolkits we have. Now, that's in the schools, and that's easy to do because we are able to do it digitally. We have our own computers that we take into the schools, and we also utilize the labs once they're available and the students are able to do the assessments. The information comes back to us. The M&E specialist does all the data analysis, and we produce a report. Now, on the business and community side, the program coordinators for business and community came in September last year. So they have been actively building out their programs. They are actively implementing them, but we are not in a position yet to evaluate them efficiently because we've not had enough time to roll out the program, be able to assess it. As it relates to how the program runs, so in schools, we have the flight classroom series, and we are in the schools every single day. And the program is run in the second form in secondary and the class 2s in primary school. And that runs from September until about May 31st, which represents week 6 in term 3. We stop in term 3 because exams normally start in week 7. Then we have our post-exam program, which is a new program that we'll be running this year, and that's for class 4 students. And that will run in June, the 1st and 2nd week of June, and we are expecting about 73 of the primary schools, including 7 private schools, to participate in that program. Then we have the Intro to Flight program, which is for the class 1s and the first formers who will do the program in the following year. We have the Get the Bag program, which is for 4th, 5th, and 6th formers, and that is a 3-part series, and that is a very, 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 very highly called for program. And then at the end of August, in August, we have our marquee event, which is the Flight Summer Experience. It's a camp that we fully funded. Last year, it was very, very successful. We had 100 students, and following the information that came back when we assessed and we evaluated that camp, the students were demanding that it be longer, so we are going to be doing it for 2 weeks, and we are hoping to have 200 students participate, and that runs for students between the ages of 14 and 18, and last year, every single secondary school had students representing, plus 3 private schools and 2 other institutions.
Thank you again for that. Minister, I think this is one of your projects in the ministry that perhaps more needs to be spoken about, just as we speak about the trust loans and other programs. I do feel that within these estimates, you need to find some resources specifically to highlight the success in relation to this particular program. Chair, I am...
Thank you, Honourable Member. Minister, you now have 5 minutes to wrap up your closing statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Been a long day. I don't know that I would take all 5 minutes. I want to thank all honorable members who participated in this extensive discussion. And I am indebted to all of you for giving this ministry an opportunity, and certainly me as minister, an opportunity to elaborate on some of the programs that we have been working on. I think that I would want to believe, Mr. Chairman, that we have visited with almost granular detail the question of how mission transformation in the Barbados economy is actually going to be achieved with respect to the performance of departments in business and the energy sector, which I think we have established beyond doubt is the driving force behind the growth and competitiveness, or much of the growth and competitiveness that we must be able to deliver. And equally with respect to the developmental prospects and transformational proposals which are obviously existing in the energy and business sector. The Economic and Recovery and Transformation Report 2026, I would say, directs us to invest our efforts towards driving that competitiveness and growth. And we believe, certainly I have made the point earlier, and I think we can say it has been reinforced in these discussions, that these estimates really are, Mr. Chairman, the right mix of programs and the right mix of policies to take us satisfactorily along the way of that journey towards greater competitiveness and greater growth. And I would want to say with those few words, therefore, that I move that Head 41 stand part.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and report to progress to His Honour the Speaker.
The question is that I do know report progress to His Honour the Speaker, and ask leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. He thinks the ayes have it. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
The Chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, we've come to the end of today's sit-in. I therefore beg to move the suspension of the House until Monday, the 9th of March at 10 a.m.
The question that this Honourable Chairman be suspended until Monday, the end of March? 10. The 9th of March, you can't give. The question is this Honourable Chairman be suspended until Monday, the 9th day of March, 2026 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chairman stands suspended until Monday, the 9th day of March, 2026 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.